Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Kingdom of Rizia. So, in the last episode, we went and met with Waylon, and we went to our lovely friendship day, and definitely nothing happened at all. No, there was actually a terrorist attack. We don't know who was actually behind the terrorist attack. I think from what I remember seeing, there were three people that were killed. It was also completely on the Wayland side. It wasn't on our side of the stands. So this may cause some problems. So we're going to have to contend with that. This is also the end of this particular chapter, so we'll be moving on into the next one as well. I did get a little bit of advice for this, of course, to not trust Waylon at all. And believe me, I had no intentions of trusting Waylon at all because while I do remember, Waylon from the main game, they were very kind of icky to deal with. There were a lot of consequences for dealing with them. If you were trying to do more of a socialist run, you could do that. And I think the only way that you could really manage to join Contana was if you did work with Waylon or if you just kind of had a neutral stance toward them, but it was very icky to turn around and work with them. There are a lot of consequences and a lot of things that they ask for in the process. It does kind of help your economy a bit because of the oil and such, but still, definitely not somebody that you want to get involved with. And as I was thinking about that today, on the flip side of things, since we're a monarchy, probably not a good idea to work with him in the first place. So yeah, and I keep forgetting that of course, in this game, since we are a monarchy, there are a lot of nations that don't look at us favorably anyway because we seem old and antiquated and da 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 da. So it's not something that's going to be well received throughout the world. Not to mention, I think we also have had some issues with several countries in the past, also. So the other thing that I was asked for was to go over the overview. This is just the overview of things that have happened in the game. As you can see, we have military conscription. These are all things that are currently active. And this is also similar to what was in the main game, except I think this was actually over here. And of course, it just kind of showed you, what things that you already have, well, what situations that you're facing, so on and so forth. But I will go ahead and go through them. So we currently have for the military, we have military conscription, mandatory for individuals aged 24 and older. Rizia's 12-month-long conscription policy has been in place since the early 1900s. A result of regional tensions, this long-standing practice ensures the nation remains militarily vigilant and prepared. We have provincial division obligations. Provinces like Brenis, Valenquieres, and Cardi Montclair are obligated to provide a division-sized formation, maxing at 14,000 to the central government from their resources. This arrangement strengthens the central military forces while preserving provincial autonomy in recruitment and training. The Rizian Armed Forces, the principal standing military body of armed forces, the RRAF, encompasses the land, naval, and air forces. With its headquarters in Montclair and under General Carlos Azaro's leadership, the forces stand as the beacon of the kingdom's defensive might, albeit ranking not in the top 5 in size in eastern Maricopa. Well, I mean, yeah, you got Roomberg up there and such, so it's kind of hard to beat them. We have Fostator Military Industrial Complex. I think this is the one that we passed. Let's see. Located in the heart of Fostator, the Forge of Rizia is renowned for its expansive foundries and factories. The Royal Fost Foundry, the most prominent among them, sits majestically at the end of the King's Avenue and primarily equips the Rizian police and military with weapons forged from local iron. Then we have the Pales Administrative District border fortifications, an expansive network of trenches and land defenses along the Rizian Palais border, constructed 2 decades ago for strategic defense against potential threats. This fortified barrier reinforces the Rizian claim and ensures security in the region. And situation, we have low military equipment stockpile. Rizia's armories show a concerning dearth of essential military equipment. Ammunition and supplies lag behind optimal levels, ringing alarm bells for defensive experts who underscore the need for strategic stockpile replenishment. We have heavy reliance on foreign equipment. A significant chunk of Rizia's military hardware comes from international markets. This overdependence on foreign suppliers jeopardizes operational autonomy, making defense strategies vulnerable to international politics and supply chain disruptions. We have a small Rizian fleet. The reduction to a small Rizian fleet marks a significant strategic challenge, limiting Rizia's maritime operational scope. This situation necessitates a heightened focus on tactical ingenuity and efficient allocation to safeguard national maritime interests and maintain a competitive edge in naval encounters. Waning combat experience. A noticeable decline in recent battlefield engagement has led to a lack of seasoned veterans. The absence of hands on combat experience has left newer recruits dependent on simulated drills, a poor substitute for the real crucible of war. Adequately trained officer corps. Rizia takes pride in its officer corps, a group of well-schooled military minds molded by rigorous training programs. Their expertise often offsets some of the logistical challenges faced by the armed forces, ensuring competent command during critical operations. Lack of naval interdiction capability. Rizia's forces have a gaping hole in their interdiction capacities. The absence of ships capable of denying enemy movement puts maritime borders at risk, emphasizing the urgent need for naval upgrades. Lack of short to medium range missiles. The Rizian missile arsenal lacks effective short to medium range variants. This limitation hampers Rizia's ability to project force over neighboring territories and defend against immediate threats. Lack of modern bombers. Modern bomber fleets elude Rizia's air force, an absence keenly felt in strategic planning sessions. Older aircraft models comprise the majority, reducing the reach and impact of aerial bombardment campaigns. Core size mobile forces. The core size composition of the mechanized and motorized forces strikes a critical balance between substantial combat power and mobility. These units, equipped for a variety of military operations, excel in both offensive and defensive roles. Their core level structure allows for significant tactical flexibility, making them a versatile and reliable component of the national defense strategy. We have an average military manpower pool. My God. We have a paratrooper brigade, we have a small marine division, monarchist fighting traditions. Rooted in Rizia's royal heritage, the monarchist fighting traditions bolster the nation's military ethos. Soldiers draw inspiration from past monarchs, channeling their valor and wisdom on modern battlefields. This blend of historical reverence and martial prowess elevates the armed forces' morale. And we have a large mountaineer corps. The formation of a sizable mountaineer corps underscores Rizia's strategic emphasis on mountain warfare and terrain-specific combat readiness. This specialized force enhances Rizia's defensive and offensive capabilities in rugged terrains, providing a significant tactical advantage in mountainous regions. The corps presence also serves as a deterrent to adversaries contemplating incursions into Rizia's high-altitude territories. Okay, so that's everything we have as far as the military goes for situations. And what do we have? Capital punishment as far as the law goes. Homosexuality is banned, semi-centralized political structure. And I'll just go ahead and gloss over these. So you can, of course, pause this and look at it as we go along. Semi-centralized political structure. The kingdom operates under a semi-centralized constitutional monarchy, a governance model where the monarch retains significant power, but certain facets of provincial governance are directly left to regional authorities. Okay. Labor hands restricted. This was also gone over in the main part. We have symbolic House of Delegates. The House of Delegates primarily plays a symbolic role in the nation's legislative framework. While members actively engage in policy debates, their direct influence on the enactment of these policies remains notably limited. And then, of course, we have the state media control. All major media outlets in Rizia operate under the Royal Herald with stringent state oversight, ensuring a consistent narrative. This level of control is pivotal in ensuring that disseminated information aligns closely with state-determined objectives and perspectives. Hence the reason why our news is very bland most of the time. No separation of powers. Rizia's governance structure centralizes authority, with the monarch holding the ultimate decision-making power. While this leads to rapid choices, the absence of power dispersal raises brows among democratically inclined observers. Supporters, however, appreciate the swift decisiveness this structure permits. Media is censored, of course. Weak human rights. Human rights in Rizia remain a tender issue. Detentions without trials, limited freedom of expression, and the looming specter of capital punishment signify an ambivalence stance on individual liberties. Hushed voices yearn for reform, hoping to see a dawn of more humane policies. Adequate women's rights. Historical reforms place Rizia ahead of many nations concerning women's rights. Yet, even with these advancements, political and economic rights for women, especially those from non privileged backgrounds, remains constrained. The societal acceptance of women in leadership roles, especially outside of privileged circles, continue to be a work in progress. Okay. Moderately homogenous society, a predominantly Rizian Ruhicist population enjoys societal privileges, shaping much of the country's cultural and political discourse. Though minority communities contribute to the national mosaic, their voices sometimes get overshadowed by the majority's drumbeat. Unequal treatment of foreigners, of course. Foreign workers from Dirtia, Wessex, Blutish, and other foreign communities face subtle inequalities in the labor market and general life. Although integral to the economic framework, these workers occasionally encounter systematic biases leading to minor diplomatic concerns and discussions about workplace inclusivity and royal traditions upheld. Royal traditions are revered in Rizia, serving as a cornerstone for the nation's laws and administrative mechanisms. These time honored customs offer stability and continuity, affirming the kingdom's heritage and the monarchy's pivotal role in guiding its future. So I kind of wonder what would have happened if I wouldn't have turned around and signed the decree to transfer power over to me. Okay, and I think that's pretty much everything in the law section. As far as the economy, we have resource-based economy. We have the Rizian Royal Gold. We have the Asquaris gas field. We have the Royal Rizian Rail and Sea Network. The Rizian wine industry, income tax, of course, which Rizia has implemented a 10% income tax rate for its citizens. This straightforward taxation system ensures that individuals contribute a fixed proportion of their earnings, promoting a transparent and equitable fiscal structure for the nation's financial stability. And then we have the Rizian football industry. Rizia's football industry is boosting the nation's passion for sport, attracting both local fans and global audiences. With top-tier clubs, stadiums, and a strong national team, the industry significantly contributes to Rizia's cultural influence and economic vitality. All right. Situations. We have a rigid energy economy, low production capacity, local tourist destination. Tourism focuses primarily on local visitors with limited international presence. While providing some economic benefits, the nation's tourist potential remains largely untapped, missing opportunities for global cultural exchanges and economic growth. The Nelvisar oil field is depleted. Global energy prices are average right now. The Aquarius gas field, average extraction volume. The RRG, state owns 30%. I would like to increase that. I don't know if that's ever going to happen. We have an average local coal extraction, average local gold extraction. Most provincial taxes are paid. Brandis, Valenqueris, and Carde Montclair, key regional economies, contribute notably to fiscal responsibility through their tax payments. However, the Treasury reports irregularities in these contributions, including delays and discrepancies, which pose challenges to the nation's financial planning and budgetary stability. Great. We have a reduction in new business. Concerning lull pervades Rizia's entrepreneurial landscape as new business registrations see a slump. With potential innovators hesitating, the economy risks stagnating, calling for urgent introspection. Analysts are diving deep to discern underlying causes and recommend strategies. We have the Sorlin HOS resort deal. The agreement with Swedish business Marcel Caranti to develop a luxury resort in Valenqueris marks a notable economic venture. While it promises tourism and economic benefits, there's negative social impacts on the locals. And then there's the MITs. They have a high resource output. Okay, so that's as far as the economy goes. As far as welfare goes, we have Lysian welfare traditions. Under the guidance of Liza, the Great Taurus, Rizia underwent transformative welfare reforms, particularly in education and women's rights. Kingdom funded institutions flourished, playing a pivotal role in national development. These institutions not only provided compulsory education for all children, but also opened doors for women to pursue both education and careers, setting Rizia apart in South Marcopa's social political landscape. All right, we have landlord favoring tenant laws. We have a market driven housing, fully state owned health and education institutions, no drug addiction treatment, and we have an affordable housing initiative. I believe that is what I started. We have denial of access to Gokana's places of worship, denial of welfare services for Gokanas. The Gokana's community is in Rizia is facing severe discrimination, with the state actively denying them access to essential welfare services. This blatant exclusion has deepened social rifts, pushing the marginalized group into dire straits and escalating societal tensions. We have horrible workers' rights. The kingdom faces a critical situation regarding labor rights, with rampant exploitation, inadequate safety, and poor representation. This has led to widespread unrest and dissatisfaction among workers across various sectors, and overcrowding at Dasnur's places of worships, lack of affordable housing, strong welfare state, and good living standards. Okay, definitely need to work on this. Jesus. All right, as far as the order goes, we have the Golden Guard Brigade, we have the Rizian Police Force, we have the Provincial Police Force, we have Rizian Royal Intelligence Service, I guess we'll call them RI6. We have the Rizian Border Guards, but we're facing ineffective foreign intelligence. We have weak border security. We have a lack of order in the city state of Isa. We have dissatisfied Gokana's community. We have a vibrant drug trade node. Limited King's Guard force. Some autonomous provincial policing. Suamina activities increase. We have mild nonviolent resistance in Brennus. Neutral Dasnur's community. Neutral Rehis's community. House Taurus regal stability. And no revolutionary threat. Interesting. And as far as diplomacy goes, we are a AN member, Alliance for Nations member. We are a Grace member. We have the Zeal Agreement of 1927. We are an OMEC member. We are a MITS board member, and we have a trade deal with Swordland. However, the situations that we face are lost territorial integrity, weak power projection, small pro-Rizia movement, weak pro-Rizia armed resistance, encroaching global rivalry, regional cultural projection. We have average trade value, mixed global image. We are a key MITS member, global monarchist support network. We have the ADA operations in Pales, and we also have the ADA operations active in Zeal. Okay, so we do have a couple things going on. All right, and then of course the other thing that was mentioned was, of course, looking at the connections. This is very similar to, again, what was in the main game, except in the main game, of course, you have your cabinet and you can see everybody here. And in this case, you have the House of Delegates, which basically just shows you, of course, who has control in the government right now. So, of course, our party, the RNC, has 44 seats and the RPP has 26. The Speaker of the House is Daria Durava. She's also the leader of the RNC. The leader of the RPP is Manis Sezon, who we spoke to a little bit earlier. And then, of course, we have the different houses. We have House Azaro, House Sezon, and, of course, House Torres. All right. Now, before I go into the next one, again, one of the things that have been, of course, praised and highly recommended for me to do was to turn around and get the dam. I have seen some comments saying that, they got the dam on, or they at least initiated the dam to be built on the very first turn, and it has paid dividends for them. So I do want to try to emphasize getting that more. So what I am going to do is I saw a decree that I can do a second global energy sale. Now, I wasn't going to do this because it only gives you +1 budget and it costs you 2 energy. But if I had +1, actually, no, I'm not going to do that because it's still not going to give me enough. I thought I had +3 there for a second and I need 5. So that will put me at 4. I just need more energy. I mean, I need more budget. And I think, and yeah, I don't have the authority to turn around and sell any military equipment or anything like that. And I do have some in training right now, so I guess that'll be done the next turn. We'll have this. I guess I'll go ahead and wait until the next turn and I'll see if I have, if it still allows me to turn around and do that. And maybe I can pull something off. What else? Because how much is the dam again? I don't want to get caught off guard by this. Again. It's 5 budget, 2 authority. So we're going to have 3 authority next turn. We just don't have the 5 budget. So, but we'll get +3 energy per turn. That is a lot. And I don't think I don't remember actually having that originally during the end of my last turn. I could be wrong. It might have just been buried in there, but I'm not sure. Anyway, let's go on ahead to the next chapter. Ties tattered. Oh, that can't be good. Okay, so we're at 1 income per turn. We're at -1. That is going to be a problem. And I think this still is going to have, yeah, I think we still got like 2 more turns before we're going to get that. So yeah, that's going to be rough. See, we don't really have any resources to turn around and train anything. We have an update on the Zeal incident. Torres family statues unveiled. A large white marble statue of the entire Torres family, including Ramos, Lena, Valero, Estella, and Vina, has been revealed at the intersection of Torres Avenue and the Golden Boulevard. The statue is a staggering 16 meters tall, with the crowns plated with gold. Due to its location, the sun sets beautifully behind the family, forming a halo around them in the early evening. Oh, okay, nice. All right. As far as the royal decrees go, we now have a lot more options. So 3rd batch of military equipment, that would give me what I need, but it would take away from my authority, so I still wouldn't have enough. I can buy my first batch of military stuff. No. What? It will take all my energy to do this. But it would give me enough to get the dam going. But I have -1 right now. So I would have to buy some energy, but I wouldn't have the budget to buy any energy. Good grief. Yeah, and it would take 2 budget, and I would have to try to find 2 budget somewhere. Let's see. Let's see. This would take 2 turns to construct, but it would only give me 1 energy per turn. Now, this would give me 2 budget per turn on completion, but it would take 3 turns to do this. Let's see. Excavation of Topaz Ancient. It's +2 to tourism. I'm not really in a position to kind of do this right now. I mean, I could, of course, but yeah, that's not really going to help my budget at all. And what's up with these administrative costs? Like, Jesus, where are these coming from? Let's see, build support vehicle factory, but that's a -1 energy per turn on completion. Let's see, this is -2 budget, -1 authority, 250 military manpower, 50 military manpower per turn on completion. It will take 2 turns to complete. It's just a purely military thing. Yeah, and that takes away from my authority, and that puts me in a position where I can't do that. That only gives me 1 budget. This is the only one. And if I do this, that puts me in a very precarious situation where I'm going to start having blackouts because I'm not going to have any energy by the end of this turn. Unless I can finagle some things. Okay. Fun times all the way around. That costs, and all of these will cost authority, I'm guessing. This will give me 1 budget per turn, but that's -3 authority, so that takes out everything. Yeah, all of these cost an absurd amount of authority and budget. Allow free press. That would cost all my authority. So yeah, this would give us access to the other newspapers. But again, I'm not really in a position to do this right now because, of course, it would kind of screw me later on. Decisions. Tax credit for businesses. -2 budget per turn. So yeah, we would not have. This will cost authority, but again, it gives us budget. Doesn't really put us in a good situation. None of these really put us in a good situation. And this is just with the thought of me trying to get the dam. Increase conscription duration. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and do the energy sale. And I'm just hoping and praying that something comes up and it will allow me to turn around and kind of salvage my energy right there. Because let me see, just to make sure, just want to make sure. I need 2 authority, 5 budget. Okay. God, this sucks. Okay. All right, let's do it. All right, so that gives me enough. Now we'll come down here and get this dam constructed. And that just obliterates everything. So there's nothing else that we can turn around and do in the meantime. We don't have any authority. We don't have any budget. We are just kind of ass out right now, honestly. Not a great feeling. Okay, bring us to harness the power of water. Hydroelectric dams start construction. Jesus. In a new decree, our king has set out a vision for diversifying the energy supply of our country away from relying only on gas. While the administration stated that the gas industry will remain of vital importance, it announced with great fanfare the construction of a hydroelectric dam near Zapna. The dam is expected to be able to provide not only the city of Zapna, but also much of Isa with energy once completed. The vast reservoir lake will be created between Zapna and Ale Nors, propelling water through 9 state of the art turbines. A network of canals and waterlocks will bypass the lake, ensuring inland shipping won't be hindered by the project. And energy exports set to increase. In an effort to increase the income of the state, the Treasury has announced that it is exploring the possibility of selling off part of the gas surplus to interested global partners. A specific partner is still to be found, but several nations have already expressed interest. This is the same thing we read before. So, okay, we did it. I feel very uncomfortable about that, and I do hope that some stuff will come up later on about deals and such that we can make. But this isn't a great situation. A few weeks has passed since the attack in Zeal. I called Lucida, Hugo, Titus, and Vina to my council chambers for a security update. Titus insisted on sweeping the room before Vina and I sat down. Hugo was next to arrive, early as usual. Your Majesty, how are you faring? I'm worried about Wayland's reaction. Smolik hasn't even made a public statement yet. Perhaps no news is good news in this case. Gentlemen, everyone automatically fell silent as Lucida strode through the room. She was dressed in her army major's blazer, with 2 stars prominently displayed above her right breast pocket. Now that the crisis had struck, her entire bearing had changed. She had a commanding air about her. Let's see. At ease, Duchess Azaro. Thank you, Your Majesty. Lucida sat and flipped open a dossier. I'll reiterate what we already know. At 16:05 hours on December 8th, 1950, an explosive object detonated in Smolik Square in the city of Zeal. It had been planted beneath grandstands that were set up that morning. Seated in those stands were a mix of civilian and political figures who had been invited to the Friendship Day event, all of Wessex heritage. The most recent casualty report states that 3 civilians were killed in the blast. Of the 14 injured, all are now in stable condition. Thank God. From what I saw, it could have been much worse. It's not good for us regardless. She turned the page. Based on the scant evidence available, Wayland's intelligence agency suspects that the Rizian nationalist group Suamina was behind the crime. She looked meaningfully at Hugo. Let's see, I could say that I do believe this. At the same time, Suamina, I could see them doing this also. The views of those extremists do not represent those of the throne. We have to make that clear. The continued involvement of one Rico Torres would suggest otherwise. I told you, Duchess Azaro, I've already spoken to Rico. He had absolutely nothing to do with what happened. Why was I not included in this conversation? Because it was superfluous. Suamina promotes Rizian values. Terrorism is not part of their mission. I should clarify, the group's official activities have never been violent, but individual members have printed leaflets calling for a more creative solution to the Wessex problem. I don't understand why Cousin Rico would even support a group like that. Queen Liza always said monarchy was incompatible with nationalism. The crown knows no borders. Yeah, Rico has no right using the tourist name to serve his own xenophobic agenda. My son is as much of a Torres as you or Princess Vina, and frankly, he should be commended for his efforts to protect the country from miscreants. If I may, Your Grace, why have you never once thrown your own weight behind Suamina if you support its ideals? Hugo spread his hands wide. It would do the group no favors to have an old man like me in the spotlight. They need youth, vitality. They are the future of Rizia, after all. Sir, can I just fire you now? He smiled warmly at Vina. My daughter looked away. Future or not, we have no concrete proof of that Suamina was behind the attack. All we have is Wayland's word. And it's in Wayland's interest to pin the blame for the bombing on Rizia. Exactly. We still haven't ruled out the possibility that President Smolik himself ordered it. Or another party interested in weakening the both of us. With an increased foreign intelligence budget, we could commission a full investigation into the Zeal incident and take measures to prevent such an event from reoccurring. How much would that cost us? A significant portion of our emergency funds, but it'll be worth it. Pardon me, ma'am. Major, Duchess. All eyes turned toward the man in the golden blazer. May I point out that you weren't present on the day of the Zeal incident. The king and I were. Prior to His Majesty's arrival, my men and I attempted to clear the square of every conceivable danger. However, we cannot be everywhere at once. You helped save our lives back there. No need to make excuses. It shouldn't have even come to that point. This event has shown how vulnerable you and the royal family truly are, and how ill-equipped my men and I are to seek out and neutralize threats to your safety. Therefore, it is my opinion that any emergency funding allocated in the wake of the Zeal attack should go towards re-expanding the Golden Guard. Lucida's jaw dropped. Captain Gordian, I trust you to guard the king, but national security is not your domain. Ma'am, back in the 1800s, the Golden Guard not only protected the royal family, but was assigned to carry out special missions of national importance. This version of the Golden Guard had the king's authority to conduct sensitive internal investigations without getting caught up in red tape. I know you have reservations about expanding the Golden Guard, Your Majesty, but this is precisely the kind of situation where our expertise would prove invaluable. Agreed. It's an opportunity that's undeniably worth its weight in gold, no pun intended. We need to find out who's behind this bombing. Can the Golden Guard help with that? We can't carry out research in Zeal, but we can work in Isa to confirm or rule out the involvement of the individuals under suspicion. Hugo blinked. Captain Gordian, I'm all for the expansion of the Golden Guard, but not if you insist on using it to chase a dead end. With respect, sir, we don't know whether it's a dead end, and investigating an organization with ties to the royal family is exactly the kind of sensitive mission the Golden Guard was built for. Perhaps so, Captain Gordian, but the attack took place at Wayland. Any resources that go towards investigating it should be allocated there, not within Rizia. She, Hugo, and Titus glared at each other. The tension was broken by a knock on the door. Lorenzo came in, clearly out of breath. Excuse me, Your Majesty, my fellow counselors. These stairs never get easier. Take a moment, Mr. Escobar. Lorenzo sat down. After catching his breath, he continued. I've just received word from Wayland's foreign minister. President Smolik plans to make it public that Rizian nationalists were involved in the Zeal incident. Lucida's hands closed into fists. Our relations with Wayland have been cordial enough that Smolik will not immediately blame the crown, but he will be expecting a response. He's just testing us. His government can't prove anything. This makes me certain that Wayland was behind the bombing. They're trying to weaken our claim on Zeal. Yeah. But at the same time, we do have a lot of investigations and stuff that we need to do, and we don't have the money to do it. Great. You see now why I want to launch an investigation. Imagine the reaction once it comes out that Smolik attacked his own people. May I ask what the five of you were discussing before I came in? Our security response to the Zeal incident. Duchess Azaro is requesting funds for a foreign intelligence investigation in Wayland, while Mr. Gordian would prefer the Golden Guards be given license to investigate threats within Rizia's borders. If I fund Duchess Azaro's investigation and exposes Wezzik's wrongdoing, Smolik won't have a leg to stand on. Actually taking up Titus's offer to conduct a thorough investigation of Suamina could help pacify Wayland. We'll summarize, Vina. I'm just going to say that. Thank you, Your Majesty. Lorenzo raised an eyebrow at Titus, pleasantly surprised. Interesting initiative, Mr. Gordian. Following up on Wayland's leads with our own internal investigation would certainly make diplomatic sense. Would it? Or would it cast unnecessary suspicions on the royal family? I agree it's dangerous to investigate an organization that His Majesty has blood ties to. But officially clearing Suamina's name would be a boon for both the group and the kingdom. So, Your Majesty, will you be conducting one of these investigations? I hate to disappoint both of you, but our treasury can't afford either investigation. Lucida and Titus looked at each other. I see, Your Majesty. Thank you for considering my proposal nonetheless. Rest assured, I remain as devoted to your security as ever, Your Majesty. Saving money is always prudent. We don't know what lies ahead. You will, however, still have to draft a public response to Wayland's statement. Do you have any suggestions? I suggest a boilerplate statement expressing Rizia's condolences for the Wezzik victims and our wishes that the perpetrators be brought to justice. If you wanted to go further, you could emphasize that Suamina is a lone wolf that does not represent the views of the crown. Hugo sniffed. Or express your confidence that the group is innocent, which it is. I find it unwise to confirm or deny Suamina's innocence before more information is known, but I'll leave it to you, Your Majesty. It seems the next steps are quite clear. Or was there any other subject that needed discussion? I think that was everything, wasn't it, Your Majesty? Yes, you're all dismissed. Enjoy the rest of your day. The others filed out the room. Hugo stayed behind. Whether or not Suamina was involved in Zeal, I want Rico to rein them in. Hugo was quiet for a moment, then looked me in the eyes. Come to Isa, Ramus. Speak to your cousin. You're long overdue. Without waiting for an answer, he left. I picked up a pen and began drafting my response to Wayland. Ah, wonderful. Okay, so we do have a decree for this. Queen Beatrice greets Rumbergians in Brunnis. Ahead of her state visit to Port Dresden, Queen Beatrice of Rumberg graced Brunnis with her royal presence, giving a short address to the city's large population of ethnic Rumbergians. From the balcony of Brunnis City Hall, she praised the city's Rumbergian diaspora for preserving their rich heritage while also embracing our local culture. Jail's Wezzik community holds Friendship Day Vigil. The Wezzik community in Giles held a candlelight vigil in honor of the victims for the Friendship Day bombing in Zeal. Members of the Brennus Police Department were on hand to prevent potential violence between the mourners and the Giles chapter of Suamina, which was banned from holding a celebratory rally several days prior. God. Oh boy, I don't think I've ever been out of budget this fast. Let's see. International Eye on Palace. Time to get those Rumberg flags out of storage. For the first time since His Majesty King Ramus's coronation, Queen Beatrice is scheduled to visit Port Dresden. The streets of the capital will be closed off for the afternoon as she and her party drive through the city to Palace Resna, where she will greet the Rizian public from the balcony before meeting with His Majesty and his family in private. A state banquet will follow. Are you going to give me some money? Because I would really appreciate some money. Zeal statement. Let's see. The press is expecting an official government statement from Rizia in the wake of the Zeal incident. In particular, they expect the king to either denounce or defend the nationalist group Suamina, who have been accused of being involved in the bombing. I'm definitely not going to defend the bastards, but I don't know if I should necessarily denounce them. At the same time, I don't think being neutral is going to help either. Because I feel like if I actually denounce and distance myself from Suamina, they're going to try to push the issue. So, and if they push the issue right now, I just don't have anything to turn around and combat this. So, yeah, problems ahoy. Um, I'm just gonna denounce and distance the crown from Suamina. Good God. Okay. We have two news article. King denounces rogue organization Suamina in the bombing aftermath. Rizians and Wessex alike are still reeling from the Friendship Day explosion that killed 3 civilians and endangered the life of King Ramus. Wayland has indicated that Rizian organization Suamina was behind this heinous act. Okay, I didn't want to do that. In response, His Majesty made a public statement accusing the group of going rogue and spreading unnecessary violence in his name. We can only hope the perpetrators will be swiftly brought to justice and security restored to the region of Zeal once more. Lesbia alarmed by the CSP's growing influence in Marcopa. Prime Minister Patricio Alvarez of Lesbia has voiced mounting concern regarding the CSP's expanding influence across South and East Marcopa. This comes as Lesbia deepens its affiliation with the Edo, signaling a clear strategic response to counter the Melanyevis sway in the region. With increased naval rotations by the CSP and the United Contan Sea Fleet, Lesbia's stance underscores the critical geopolitical recalibration underway. Alvarez's administration, through adept foreign policy and military strategies, seeks to fortify Lesbia's regional position, safeguarding national interests amidst the escalating naval presence of rival powers. Okay. All right, Territorial Zeal, read the report. 76 arrests since the aftermath of the bombing. Wessex authorities have arrested at least 76 people in the Zeal region on suspicion of connection to the bombing, many of Rizian and Blutish origin. The whereabouts of many of the detained are unknown, which is starting to worry international observers. Great. And the hits just keep on coming. All right, visit from Queen Beatrice of Rumberg. Vina, Estella, and I sat in the palace residence' most ornate stateroom, awaiting the arrival of Queen Beatrice Livingston. An informal supper with my sister-in-law was scheduled for the evening, but for now, the protocol for an official diplomatic visit had to be observed. Papal came in through the stateroom door and took a deep breath. Announcing Her Majesty Beatrice Livingston, Queen of the Four Corners of Marcopa, defender of Castle Zarbo, conqueror of the Tranquil Sea, stout protector of the ancient lands of Rome, descendant of the most honorable King Edward I, and ruler of Rumberg. I'm surprised they didn't say Beatrice first of her name, too. Mother of Dragons. He stepped aside. Queen Beatrice entered, flanked by her attendants. She was wearing an emerald green gown that matched her tiara. So, oh, okay. So she's a high tower. Vina, Estella, and I rose to greet the queen. I will kiss her hand, shake her hand, embrace her. I'll just kiss her hand. I took my sister-in-law's hand and kissed it. She looked me up and down. What a pleasure it is to see you, Your Majesty. We barely had the chance to speak at the coronation. And my dear niece. She turned towards Vina. Why, you're looking more and more like your mother every day. I hope your father's proud of the lady you've become. I am, and I know Lena would have been too. Vina beamed. It's lovely to see you, Aunt B. Beatrice embraced her tightly before moving on to my mother. The two women gave each other air kisses, then stood back and eyed each other. Queen Beatrice. Queen Mother Estella. She tilted her face upwards and gave a short sniff. The palace looks as magnificent as always, but I fear a chat with your housekeeper may be in order. Every time I visit, it smells just the faintest bit like trash. My mother feigned a puzzled look. Is that so, Your Excellency? Funny, I do seem to detect an unpleasant draft of hot air, but only since you walked in. So they don't like each other. Huh. Shall we be seated? If you will excuse me, I shall take my leave. I have a terribly urgent appointment on the other side of the palace. By all means, Your Highness. Our chatter is far more boring than the sort of carousing you're used to. Vina, why don't you run along as well? We'll catch up over supper. Vina reluctantly nodded. Sure, Aunt B. Have the staff give my room a ring when you're done. I'll see you two out. Just a moment. Papal walked Beatrice and myself over to a pair of velvet armchairs. Next to them was a table upon which a towering silver Rimburgian tea urn had been set up. He filled 2 porcelain cups for us, then escorted Vina and my mother out of the door. Beatrice motioned for her own attendants to wait outside. We settled into our seats. Let's see. I'll say, how is your own family? Splendid. King Consort Boris sends his sincerest regrets. He had to oversee some Air Force exercises. Queen Beatrice extended her little finger and raised her teacup to her lips. She smiled approvingly. Just like home. My compliments to your butler. Now, how are you faring a year into your reign? I know you had quite the scare in Zeal. I'm less scared by what happened than by the ramifications of it. That is the correct manner of thinking. Needless to say, Rumberg has been monitoring the fallout of the incident with great concern. Your concern is much appreciated. She nodded. Aside from my worries about your personal safety, I foresee a scenario where Wayland uses this tragedy to its own gain. And Wayland amassing more power is not in either of our interests, correct, Your Majesty? Yeah, I mean, I do want peace, but, if they try, they will face consequences. I don't know why I'm trying to be a hard ass right now, considering that we are not equipped for this. Precisely. Beatrice leaned forward and held my gaze. Of course, we are the same age, Your Majesty, but I've worn my crown for many years longer than you have yours. And I and my country are far more experienced at dealing with the Republic of Wayland and their backers in the CSP. By indicating that you regard your own countrymen as culpable for the bombing, you're putting yourself in a position of weakness from the start. Have you thought about your next steps? What will you do if Mr. Smolik fails to relinquish his hold on Zeal? Let's see. If it comes down to it, I'm prepared to fight. Then you will need Rumberg's help. Oh no, I'm not gonna be modest. I need help. Do go on, Queen Beatrice. Here's what I suggest, Your Majesty. As you may know, Rumberg is currently a major importer of Wessex oil. If we were to significantly reduce our imports, the financial pressure, and thus your leverage over Wayland, would be considerable. Wait, how much oil are you importing from Wayland? Enough to seriously make a dent in the country's economy, where our purchase orders to diminish. But in fact, my advisors and I have been speaking about forging new energy partnerships. And as it happens, Rizia is about to come into possession of quite a bit of natural gas, correct? Yes, we discovered a new gas field. It's very exciting. How grand. My proposal then would be for Roomberg to purchase Rizian energy in lieu of Wessex oil. We enrich your country and assist you with your Wayland problem in one fell swoop. Huh. What kind of timeline are you thinking about? We can cut off our orders of Wessex oil immediately, as long as you grant us a small amount of energy up front to add to our stockpile. Son of a bitch. We then give you a 1 year grace period to make the transition, after which I warn you our needs will be quite substantial. This is a serious promise. What happens if I can't keep up my end of the guarantee? We'll have to find a more reliable trading partner for energy as well as other materials. And I will be most displeased. Oh boy. Interesting. But how would Rizian gas even reach Roomberg from here? I'm quite sure some of the same ships that carry out our gold trade can be retrofitted to transport natural gas in its liquefied form. Of course, an immediate modernization of your Monkey's port will be required to handle the excess shipping traffic. Oh, come on. That can be arranged. Even if you don't ship us gas, getting that port into tip-top shape would make our gold trade more efficient. Will we have to replace all the oil you've been purchasing? What about only part of it? Roomberg would prefer to eliminate its energy dependence on Wayland entirely. But of course, we wouldn't want Rizia to make any overly rash promises. So yes, a partial embargo on our end is possible. So you believe Wayland can't find another customer? Believe it or not, Victor Smolik has managed to alienate Wayland from most of its neighbors. I know our partners in Grace would surely follow suit and cut their own ties. Okay, I think I have a good grasp on the particulars of the deal you're suggesting. And what do you think of the idea? Of course, I can't make any deals right now. Good God, this seems like a terrible decision. I can't promise you anything right now, Your Excellency, but I'll keep your offer in mind as Rizia expands its energy horizons. Very well, Your Majesty. Of course, we'd appreciate any help stoking our hungry furnaces. Moving on to equally important matters. How are the princess marriage plans coming along? I wouldn't know. I told her I won't be arranging her marriage. Did you? My word. We royals are an endangered breed, you know. We've got to tend to our lineages as we would a rose garden. I don't see the harm in allowing a few exotic plants to blossom here and there. Choose the wrong ones and the weeds will spread faster than you can pull them out. And don't forget that the rest of Grace is invested in the Taurus line of succession as well. Our partners will be looking for reassurances after your coronation speech. Which partners do you mean? All of them, Your Majesty. Just as the world's remaining monarchies pledge to enter an era of increased cooperation, you tell your entire country you intend on giving the people a voice. What am I to make of that, Your Majesty? Or Narberg? Or the baronies of Soridis? Giving people a voice doesn't mean giving up monarchy. Isn't your own country governed by a parliament? Technically, yes, but it has roughly as much power as your House of Delegates. You were lucky to escape the 1926 uprising with your head. To make such a public overture towards democracy is to tempt fate. Well, thank you for warning me. I shall keep your words in mind. I hope you shall do more than that. She rose to leave. I shall see you at supper, Your Majesty. The Queen gave the door a swift knock. Her attendants opened it, and bowing as they did so, she paused. Congratulations on your recent trade deal, by the way. Although I wouldn't trust the swords any further than I could throw them. She walked out with her gown trailing behind her. And of course, she doesn't like swordling. Surprise, surprise. I need money. I need energy. Swordist businessman Walter Tusk goes on holiday in Valanqueur's wine country. The Contevo vineyards in Quellis welcomed Swedish oligarch Walter Tusk and his family, who spent the night at the winemaker's luxury villa before continuing on a short tour of Valanqueur's wine country. Tusk confided that his newfound interest in the region was inspired by the recent availability of Rizian wine in Swordland. Okay. Let's see. Swedish magnate Marcel Caronte checks in on the resort construction progress. In Monquise, acting Duke Hubertus Torres welcomed Heart of Swordland co-owner Marcel Caronte for a visit to the still under construction Caronte Resort Valanqueris. The business magnate expressed his approval at the resort's progress and his eager anticipation of its opening. Volgish Heritage Week allowed to proceed in Fort Ailes. The Pales Administrative District was once more allowed to organize its annual Volgish Heritage Week, a festival celebrating the region's history as part of the Volgish Empire. Accompanied by controversy since the Rizian reconquest and resettlement of the district, it was especially contentious this year due to the events of Friendship Day in Zio, which sparked security concerns. However, the week seems to have proceeded peacefully, with only a few clashes between local Rizians and those of Volgish Pelasian heritage. Okay, I think that's everything. What is the next? We have a family visit to Isa. CSP investments in Nibia achieve poverty reduction milestones. The CSP investment strategy in Nibia is bearing fruit, significantly elevating poverty in a nation poised for a renaissance under the leadership of Antanura Latafe. The democratically elected leader's bold promise to eradicate poverty within 8 years mirrors the CSP commitment to economic development as a diplomatic tool. Amidst the simmering tensions of regional conflicts, the CSP's investments in Nivea is not only a humanitarian effort, but also a strategic endeavor to cultivate a reliable ally, ensuring stability and support in a critical geopolitical nexus. Okay. So many things going on around us and not actually within us, besides the whole incident in Zeal. After months of promises and schedule conflicts, Vina and I were finally on our way to visit my cousin Rico Torres at his palace in Isa. The city's main road was straight and impossibly wide, a relic of Markian times when the city was a major trading center. I waved out the car window to the crowds of citizens lining the road. Up ahead, the domed library of the university brought back memories. First of my happy student years there, then of the horrifying way they'd ended. I noticed most of the people who'd come out to see us were native Rizians, even on the streets of the city's Wizard Quarter, Little Roklowitz. Vina suddenly tapped me on the shoulder. Father, look over there. In front of the university library, a construction crew was hastily pulling a sheet over a large object. Stop the car at once. I want to see what's under the sheet. We came to a halt. My guards exited the car and ordered the workers to remove the sheet. Beneath it was one of the statues I'd commissioned earlier in my reign, depicting notorious lineage. My father, myself, and Vina. All of our heads had been chopped off. How could Rico have allowed this to happen? Like Duchess Azaro said, he's in over his head. She unconsciously put a hand on her own neck. Do you think Rico wanted us to see this? He's trying to crack down on crime here, isn't he? What better excuse than sedition against the royal family? That's a good theory, Vina. You're as perceptive as your mother was. Thank you, Father. Hugo's meeting us here too, right? Why do you think they wanted us here so badly? I have my guesses. No, let's try to be more open about her. Well, at least with her. Um, mm, the invitation coming so soon after the Zeal incidents is no coincidence. I can't even remember the last time Cousin Rico and I properly spoke. When we were children, maybe. We rode on until we reached the Palace Saison. Under Rico's stewardship, a formidable looking iron gate had been constructed around the otherwise tranquil palace complex. His security led us through to the Duke's residence, a blindingly white building with the flags of Rizia and House Torres hanging from every window. We walked up to the doors. As soon as the guards opened them, a pair of long-nosed Rizian hunting dogs raced towards us, barking. Pet the dogs. Bella, Bruno, sit. Both dogs promptly sat at attention, still as statues. I heard the sound of boots on tile as my cousin Rico approached. He was wearing an olive green tweed jacket and a flat cap. He gave me a quick bow of acknowledgement, then knelt and kissed Venus' hand. I was struck by his transformation from a gawky, insecure teen to a broad-shouldered, naturally confident young man. Welcome, my cousin. It has been far too long. Greetings, Your Grace. I trust Father informed you of today's plans. We leave for the woods in an hour. Wait, what? Hugo appeared from behind his son, a sheepish look on his face. Your first hunt as king. I wanted it to be a surprise. I appreciate it, but I was hoping the four of us could have a serious conversation. We'll have plenty of chances for that. 9/10 of this sport is waiting, after all. Not when you have this. He turned around and showed us the KA-74 semi-automatic rifle strapped to his back. Hugo turned up his nose disapprovingly. Isn't that cheating? Boars are speedy bastards. You'd be surprised, Your Highness. He smiled rackishly at my daughter. We have outfits prepared for the two of you, and your choice of weapons, of course. Let's see. It'll be a good old-fashioned rifle for me. Hugo smirked at his son. You see, boy, there are still real gentlemen in this world. I do wish I'd known about these plans. I've never so much as held a gun before. Come now, I'll teach you. It'll be great fun. Inside, Vina and I quickly refreshed ourselves and changed into the hunting garb that had been laid out for us. We stepped out to find two waiting jeeps. Vina, care to share a car with your old man? Rico swiftly interjected. I knew it, little bastard. If you don't mind, Your Majesty, I've had this car prepared for the two of us. He gestured to his side, who held to his aide, who held the door of the first Jeep open. The two of us stepped in. East of the palace, the landscape quickly turned hilly and green. We were entering the Brennis Forest Estate, a private hunting ground reserved for nobility only. I turned away from the window to see Rico looking at me intently. You must already know what I'm about to say, Your Majesty. I knew you didn't approve of the company I keep here in Isa, but to accuse us, them, of terrorism. Let me see. Waylon has every reason to suspect Suhamina's involvement in what happened, as do I. Trust me, nobody I know has a clue who was behind the Zeal attack. A light smirk formed on his face, though I can't say I wasn't happy to see those Wessex get what was coming to them. For heaven's sake, son, have some respect for the dead, or you'll get what's coming to you if you carry on with that kind of talk. Yeah, I'll go with that. Excuse me, Your Majesty. The point is that President Smolek's accusations are based on nothing, just his own vendetta against us. But if you want this mess cleared up in time for Zeal to be returned, I think I can help you. How? He cleared his throat. The people in my organization are loyal to me, Your Majesty. Very loyal. If one or two of them were to confess to the attack as a splinter cell acting independently of both Suamina and the Crown, it'd solve both of our problems. Wayland's investigators aren't stupid. They'd uncover the truth. Not if the truth is that Wayland itself was behind the attack. My hunch is they're counting on Rizia to deny the crime so they can postpone the Zeal handover. By handing over my men, we'd be calling their bluff. Um, it would be convenient to put this incident behind us as fast as possible. Just how loyal are these scapegoats you're proposing? Would they crack on their interrogation? This is icky. Good God, this is icky. And of course, he's gonna want something in return. Something I probably don't want to pay. I appreciate the gesture, but I can't condone this. Understood, Your Majesty. He winked. That's not code, Rico. Come forth with false suspects and I'll have your head. Oh, never mind then. Rico looked away for a moment. The woods around us were growing denser. If there's anything else you'd like to bring up with your king, now is the time. Rico eagerly turned back towards me. I'm sure you've been kept abreast of the situation here, Your Majesty. The drugs, the violence, the open resistance against our government. The headless statues. You weren't supposed to see those. I've heard that in times of emergency, police from the Rizian Central Forces can be placed under individual leaders' direct command. I've petitioned your War and Security Counselor for just such a transfer, but she refused. Rightly so. You should be cooperating with the greater province of Brennus. You mean with the Saisons? He snorted. They can't be counted on to cooperate. If anything, they're actively plotting against us. I'll send you the petition when we are both back home. I trust you do what's best for our city. We pulled off the road and continued some distance on a dirt path that wound through the pines. We came to a halt at the mouth of a grassy clearing with gently sloping sides. Hunting blinds lined its perimeter. It vaguely resembled a gigantic serving vessel. At last, enough politics talk. We disembarked and Rico eagerly unlatched the back of our Jeep. Bella and Bruno hopped out and started sniffling the air. Caught the scent already, my dears. Must be dozens of boars out there. Of course, I could probably die from a boar, just like the king from Game of Thrones. The other car pulled up next to us. Hugo and Vina got out, still in conversation. So you see, Your Highness, knowing how to aim and fire a gun correctly is as useful a royal skill as knowing how to hold a salad fork. Uh, with the essential difference that lettuce doesn't bleed when you pierce it. Hugo chuckled politely. He waved his son over. I've bored you enough, Your Highness. I believe Rico was going to show you the ropes. I would be delighted to, if the king permits. He extended his hand to my daughter. Actually, I was hoping I could escort my daughter on her first hunt. Hugo smoothly stepped between us. Why not let the youngsters have their fun? Old men like us would slow them down. I know what you're doing. You're damn right about that, Father. Shall we, Vina? He beckoned to Vina again. She hesitantly followed him over to the nearest hunting blind. Hugo shrugged. The two of us it is, Your Majesty. An assistant handed me my rifle. A Rizian made the Tor 56. It was more awkward to hold than I expected. My son may aim for quantity, but men like us know quality is key. He locked and loaded his own Dator rifle. Its stock had a gold embossed bull on it. We climbed up the hunting blind opposite of Vina and Rico's position. And now we play the waiting game. There was a long stretch of silence, punctuated only by the chirping of birds and the occasional bark of Bella and Bruno in the distance. I may not like Rico's hunting methods, but his dogs are second to none. They'll drive the boars out in no time. Let's see. Rico is a shrewd kid, takes after his father. You're too kind. He calmly aimed his rifle toward the glade. So you will consider him as a marriage prospect for your daughter, then? Um, Shockingly enough, the thought never crossed my mind. That is indeed shocking, Your Majesty. As you know, there are interests both inside and outside this country who seek. There are interests both inside and outside this country who seek to snatch Rizia away from House Taurus. That word wouldn't be my first choice either, but the only way to keep our family, but it's the only way to keep our family in power. The right alliances can make us more powerful than blood alone. And the wrong ones will doom us to history's dustbin. As your uncle and your advisor, this is my advice. You may follow or disregard it as you choose. Just then, we heard a rustling sound coming from the woods. Bella and Bruno had found their quarry. A group of boars racing into the clearing, the dogs nipping at their heels. Working in tandem, they forced their prey into the lowest part of the glade. Looking through my gun sight, I fixed my crosshairs on the group. I'll shoot a boar. I struggled to keep the gun steady as it fired. The shot went wide and the boars scattered in all directions. Been too long, has it? Allow me. In one swift... Oh, I'm guessing if I had been in the military, I probably would have turned around and actually hit it. In one swift motion, he aimed and fired his rifle. The largest of the boars fell to the ground. As we turned away to reload, I heard a series of rapid-fire bangs coming from Rico's direction. I looked back out of the blind to see the ground littered with dead boars. Not very sporting, if you ask me. By the end of the hunt, I had 0 kills. Hugo had 6, and Rico had racked up a dozen. He and my daughter were deep in conversation as they climbed down from their blind. Lies of this, lies of that. I'm telling you, if the Wayland Civil War had happened while grandmother was still in power, she wouldn't have set out the welcome mat. No, Liza would have honored Rizia and Wayland's long history of cooperation and shown compassion for those who suffered. You naive little girl. Everyone in Marcopa wants what we Rizians have. The Wessex saw a chance to get it, and they've jumped on it. He flung his gun on the ground in frustration. I'm afraid your daughter didn't shoot a damn thing on today's hunt, Your Majesty. She was too busy distracting me with her nonsense opinions. Vina is your intellectual superior in every way, you twit. You will apologize to her now. He seemed to collect himself for a moment. I'm sorry, Your Highness. I must have gotten carried away. Rico and Hugo posed for photographs next to the boars they killed. The assistants began packing everything away. We'll eat well tonight. The chef at Palace Saison does an excellent braised boar with wine sauce. Rico, Vina, why don't you two ride ahead and notify the kitchen staff? His Majesty and I will be right behind you. Vina gave me a pleading look. Why don't you go with your son, Hugo? I'll accompany the princess. Hugo raised an eyebrow. As you wish. Come along, Rico. Vina silently thanked me as Rico and Hugo departed. We climbed into the second jeep and headed back to the palace. Dinner that night was indeed delicious. Okay, all right, we have some tense things going on there, but at the same time, yeah, it's just not great. United Contana's Triple S monitors geopolitical's Kiao office. In a move that has sent ripples through international journalism circles, the State Security Service of United Contana has commenced surveillance on Geopolitical's Kiao office. The scrutiny, publicly denounced by Assistant Secretary Tokaz Intili Iyatake, betrays fractures within the Contanan government, with the decision by Chairman Melaniev drawing fire for its implication on press freedoms. This act of state oversight signals an ominous trend in United Contana's treatment of the press, raising alarm bells about media liberties and transparency within the nation. You know, there's a lot more stuff about United Contana this time around, and I guess about Arcasia, but there's a lot more internal things about United Contana this time around, which I like to see. Rizia Imperial Businesswomen's Association highlights gender pay gap. A new report released by Rizia Imperial Businesswomen's Association, REBA, reveals that despite the great strides our kingdom has made for women's rights, inequality persists in the job market. Men still earn significantly more than women, a gap that the REBA report suggests can be surmounted with the help of government intervention. Of course it is. Let's see. Royal visit to the Scarlet Kingbird Festival. Isa police transfer. Duke Rico Torres of Isa has requested a transfer of additional police forces to his direct control to crack down on the recent upswing in crime. These reinforcements will be drawn from the federally controlled Central Police headquartered in Rizia Imperi. Deny it, of course. All right. And we have Salabis, royal visit to the Scarlet Kingbird Festival. No idea what this is. Every spring, the seaside town of Salabis celebrated the Scarlet Kingbird Festival. The vibrantly colored songbirds spent their winters in Xena, near the southern part of what used to be the Moser Empire. Every spring, like clockwork, they flew back over the Gulf of Mordia to settle in Salabis. Their return was celebrated with music, dancing, and lavish banquets, opened by a speech from the reigning Duke of Salabis. It was traditional for the king of Rizia and his family to attend. The sun hung low in the sky over the Arena Salabes, a 100-year-old open-air venue perched directly on the beach. Vina and I sat waiting in the royal box as cameras flashed in our direction. My daughter impatiently tapped her fingers on the arm of her chair. We hadn't spoken much since Isa. Are you corresponding with Rico these days? What? No. I was about ready to murder him after the Isa trip. A fanfare sounded from the pit orchestra, and an announcer stepped behind the podium. This year, he said, the speech would be given not by the Duke of Salabis, but by the heir of House Saison. The audience roared as Manus Saison got on stage. This was no longer the nervous young man I had met in Port Drazen. He radiated confidence as he stepped up to the podium. Greetings, Salabines. He waited for the applause to subside, then held up a hand for the audience to listen. The entire arena fell silent. The story of the scarlet kingbird is a story about trust. Every year, this tiny feathered creature travels thousands of kilometers to reach our shores. He doesn't know what perils await him on the way to his destination, nor what sort of welcome will await him there. Yet he flies on because something deep within his soul compels him to do so. An inner voice that tells him, "This is your home." Hmm. Huh. The kid has charisma. Shh. Vina glared at me, then turned her full attention back to the man on stage. And what of those who wait for him? They have no idea what he's been, where he's been, or how he knows to navigate to this exact same spot each time. Still, they gather here, scanning the skies for the first sign of his return. As if on cue, a solitary bird came flying towards us from over the horizon. Its plumage was bright red. A tear rolled down Manus' cheek. Trust. It's the only way any of this works, even when we've been given no reason, even when our faith is tested over and over. A second bird followed, then a third. It's only when we place our trust in one another that we are able to find our way. The audience gasped as the sky over our heads filled with hundreds and hundreds of kingbirds, their crimson feathers magnificently lit by the setting sun. Have you ever seen anything so beautiful? It's breathtaking. Vina sniffled. She had tears in her eyes as well. Once the sun had set and the birds had gone to roost, we made our way to the VIP reception in the neighboring pavilion. A big band was playing jazz music as Vina and I entered. We immediately found ourselves surrounded by local officials, celebrities, and members of the press. It was nearly an hour before I was able to sit down. Almost as soon as I parked myself in a chair, I noticed Manus Saison making his way over to me. Mr. Saison, a pleasure to see you again. Manus smiled and shook my hand. Actually, I've been hoping to speak with you for a long time. Hmm. Hmm. So why didn't you request an audience with me? Like him so far. I mean, I'll be nice to him. He gave me a look that was equal parts hurt and puzzled. I did, through your Grand Vizier. The message must have gotten lost. But since we're both here right now, Your Majesty, I know what you and your family think of me, and I know that my position in government is symbolic at best, but I still think we have a chance to accomplish great things for this country. Hmm. Let's see. All right, I'll indulge you. Tell me what you have in mind. Well, Your Majesty, I joined the House of Delegates because of Lucas Saison, because my father's rash act of violence robbed Rizia of the peaceful transition it deserved. The remaining Saisons and I are in agreement. Our citizens need not shed blood to be granted a voice. Hmm. Let's see. All of these are kind of antagonistic to a certain degree. That kind of change you're talking about doesn't happen peacefully. Look at how many corpses the century of revolution left in its wake. I don't want to say this. Hmm. A peaceful transition to what? Manus traced the rim of his wine glass with his finger. Rizia already has the framework in place to become a true constitutional monarchy, a place where citizens have a greater say in the lawmaking process, but the royals keep their status and influence. I heard your coronation speech. I believe your aims are the same as mine. Hmm. Uh, I'm sure you're aware that removing any of the monarch's powers would invite the wrath of my relatives. I'll just say hypothetically, what if I wanted to do away with the Rizian monarchy altogether? Manus glanced around, then leaned forward. That would present significantly more difficulties, as we both know. I might be willing to aid with such a radical transformation, but my family would not. Hmm. Not even if I guaranteed them their positions would be safe. You'd have to be somewhat more convincing than that. They've seen what can happen when the people of this country get too emboldened. They want change, but they're not about to stick their necks out for it. But let's discuss this back in the capital. It may not be impossible to gain my relative's support. Come to the House of Delegates. You should have an idea how the current system works before we begin talking about how to fix it. I'll be there. With a smile, he stood up and pushed back his chair. I've taken up enough of your time. If you'll excuse me, I'll freshen up my drink. He turned around to head to the bar and came face to face with Vina, who was returning to our table. Her face was slightly flushed. Oh, excuse me, Mr. Caesar. Nothing to excuse, Your Highness. I hope you're enjoying your time in Salabas. I was just speaking to the bartender. He's still trying to get the rest of his family out of Dirtia. I told him I'd see what I could do. Manus smiled warmly. That's very noble of you, but there are thousands like him, and not all of them are lucky enough to catch the Princess of Rizia at a benevolent moment. Hmm. Hmm. He's right. We've got to tackle this problem at the root, not by granting special favors. Vina ignored my remark. Your speech was beautiful, Mr. Sazon. Actually, it reminded me of an essay of Queen Liza's from 1883 on social contracts. Yes, that was one inspiration. What were the others? The band began playing Sweetheart at Ventry City, an upbeat tune that had recently reached us from Arcasia. You know what? Tell me after this dance. She took a step closer towards Manus and extended a hand to him. He looked at me questioningly. Hmm. You don't need my permission. Have fun. Vina beamed. Manus took her hand and rose from his seat. Wait, this is faster than the dances I've been learning. Do you know the steps? As a matter of fact, I do. I'll walk you through it. He led Vina out onto the dance floor. Cameras flashed as the two of them started dancing. I wondered if the photographers were capturing the look in my daughter's eyes. It was the same one her mother had given me during our first dance together. I'm sure Hugo's gonna love that. All right, what do we got going on? Rizian Oil and Gas continues assessment of new gas field. The Rizian Oil and Gas Corporation is continuing its assessment of the newly discovered gas field off the country's coast, tentatively nicknamed Oris. In cooperation with Pelagian scientists, a team of geologists has begun seismic surveys to determine the field's exact borders. It is expected that the surveys will be completed within the next several months, so not this turn. All right, we have a meeting with Rusty Montoro. I'm pretty sure he's going to offer me something that I can't give him. Golconda's pilgrims demand access to Morella border. A considerable congregation of devout Golconda's pilgrims from Dirtia and Morella have congregated at the Point d'Arte border crossing, seeking entry into Rizia for their sacred pilgrimage. Allowing these pilgrims to cross into Rizia could boost global image as a bastion of tolerance and compassion. However, these groups may intend to visit holy sites that are currently restricted under our laws. I will allow it. Okay. Says on the air gives speech about trust, but can he be trusted? In a recent display of audacity, Rizian People's Party leader and House Saison Heir, Manus Sazon, chose to grandstand about trust at the Scarlet Kingbird Festival, the largest annual event in Brennus. The choice of topics seems steeped in irony given his well-documented skepticism towards the monarchy that forms the bedrock of our kingdom. In front of an audience that included His Majesty King Ramus and Her Highness Princess Vina, he gave an emotional speech that left many Saison supporters teary eyed, but that left us at the Herald wondering about his true motivations. One couldn't help but wonder if the decision to grant the opening speech to young Manus instead of the mayor of Salabas was an attempt by House Saison to capitalize on a royal event for political gain. Rufus Gragg's royal gossip. Vina dances at last. Well, now we know what it takes to get Her Highness off her seat and onto a ballroom floor. A request from the dashing and dangerous young heir to House Saison. VIP visitors to this year's Scarlet Kingberg Festival were treated to the sight of Princess Vina and Duke Manus making goo goo eyes at each other while cutting a rug. Just a polite dance or something more? And what, oh, what will her father say? Stay tuned, dearest readers. President Walker boosts welfare, faces economic challenge. President Dwight Walker's strategic choice to swell Arcasia's welfare spending through deficit financing has emerged as a double-edged sword, quelling social unrest but catapulting the nation's debt to GDP ratio to the brink at 90%. This fiscal gambit has earned political dividends, squashing or quashing protests and buoying Walker's approval rating. Yet it has simultaneously contributed to a dip in public support for Charles Devereux of the Reformist Union. The Walker administration now faces the daunting task of upholding social welfare commitments while steering the Arcasian economy through an increasingly precarious fiscal landscape. I do wonder, like in the future of Suzerain, how this is going to go. Because, I mean, if this goes by our politics, he's Nixon. Nixon gets into a scandal. He gets impeached. Well, he doesn't get it. Well, he resigns and leaves office. Then I believe Gerald Ford is next. He loses to Jimmy Carter. There's a economic crisis that's brought about due to the oil fields in the Middle East and the issues with Iran and such. And then, of course, he loses to Ronald Reagan and then cuts. So austerity galore. So in the future, that would be interesting, but that's way into the future. And that's also assuming that they go along the same path. I do kind of hope that this goes in a different direction where we kind of have something kind of akin to like For All Mankind, where you have a situation of, what happened if the USSR survived. I would like to see something like that, where it's a situation of what happens if these two superpowers are just still around, superpowering or whatever. So, and maybe perhaps a third superpower with a not Africa situation or a not China situation. So, all right. Meeting with Rusty Montaro. On the banks of the Zeppelin River in Brunnis stood Palais Verena. Almost as opulent as my own palace, it had once served as the summer residence for my ancestors, the Rubis family. Today, it was the home of Russello Rusty Montero, the CEO of Rizian Royal Gold and the wealthiest commoner in the country. I stepped out onto the deck of the Riznia as the yacht approached the palace private dock. Hugo and Elena were already there, gazing out at the grounds. I can't believe what I'm seeing. Palais Verena without its water garden is no palace at all. I think it's an improvement myself, but what do you make of this, Your Majesty? I looked in the direction she was indicating. The water garden, once a tranquil oasis filled with blossoming flowers and gently burbling fountains, had been replaced with a gigantic gold-tiled swimming pool. Ugh, hideous. I hate new money. I'd be surprised if Mr. Montero even used it. Suddenly, a group of armed men exited the palace in single file. They positioned themselves at equal intervals around the dock. They followed us with their eyes as we disembarked and walked towards the palace veranda. As I passed the largest guard, I noticed he was wearing a badge that read, Palantor Security Solutions. Palantor? Are you Arcasian? He stared at me with a look of non-comprehension. Rusty rose from where he'd be sitting and rushed over to us. Anton, there's no way, that's no way to treat our royal visitors. Or Antony. The guard reluctantly bowed to me. Rusty ushered us past him and showed us to a set of chairs. The gold magnate's red hair was streaked with gray, but his eyes had a youthful mischief about them. On behalf of all of us at the esteemed Rizian Royal Gold Corporation, I do hereby extend my cordial greetings. He trailed off with a grin. Heck, I was never one for formalities. Welcome to my palace, Your Majesty. It's a pleasure, Rusty. He turned to Hugo and Elena. Your Grace, Madam Treasurer, haven't had a sit down with you two since the last man wore the crown. My uncle gritted his teeth. You must mean my honorable brother, His Majesty King Valero. May he rest in peace. Now, Hugo, Rusty paid his respects at the funeral like everyone else. She shook Rusty's hand. He beckoned for us to sit as his butlers brought over water and fresh fruit. So how's business? We'll get to that, Your Majesty. Settle down. Have a drink first. A shame Her Highness couldn't make it, too occupied with her latest boo. One dance does not a boo make. Well, thank you not to speculate about Princess Vena's romantic prospects. Please tell me what this meeting is about, Rusty. We don't have all day, agreed. We're keeping the topic of my daughter's love life within the family. Well, all right, I'll cut to the chase then. He sat back and unbuttoned the top button of his shirt. You know there would be no Rizia without Rizian Royal Gold. I'd say the partnership between your company and the monarchy has benefited both of us equally. Sure, Your Majesty. My point being, it's fair to say that what concerns me concerns this country. And right now, what concerns me is this. He picked up a piece of paper from the table next to him. It was a flyer with a few sentences written in both Rizian and Wessex. Supervisors at my mines are picking up hints that the workers are holding after-hours meetings on the subject of unsafe conditions. Have you tried, improving those conditions? Meeting workers' demand is like feeding zoo animals. The more you give them, the hungrier they get. Have there been any accidents lately? Anything that might have triggered this? Rusty snorted. Accidents have been part of this job since the dawn of time. Used to say you weren't a real miner until you were missing a finger. Did you ever even work in the mines yourself, Rusty? Not extensively, but I've swung a pickaxe or two in my day. Hugo cleared his throat. Do you have a request of His Majesty, Mr. Montoro? Or have you merely invited us here to complain? Not complain, warn. I'm not going to change a thing about the way my mines operate, so sooner or later this is going to land in your lap. RRG's value has been going down since we lost Zeal. Now, safety regulations might sound fine and dandy, but they'd be a death blow to our bottom line. Aren't most of your miners labor hands from foreign countries? But the regulations even apply to them. They're fixing to have it that way, yes. The folks pushing for those regulations, are a mix of labor hands and honest to goodness Rizians, with some support from the Saisons to boot. I see what they're going for, I really do, but giving them everything they want would damn near bankrupt me. Little extreme, don't you think? I agree we shouldn't impose more regulations than necessary, but investing in safer and healthier employees could lead to profit in the long term, foreigners included. How much revenue will we stand to lose? Hard to say. Implementing the regulations themselves would cost a pretty penny. And what do you think will happen if we pass those costs on to our trading partners? They'll hit the road faster than my first ex-wife. Alina raised her eyebrows. We've been seeing more global competition on the gold market, unfortunately. But for now, our product is of high enough quality that Roomberg is willing to pay more for it. Yes, but if the price rises further still, I'd rather not admit it, but Mr. Montoro may have a point. We still have the Methium International Trade Zone, don't we? Well, that's the other thing. I'm sure you know all about Alma Santana, a Malinyevis, a dangerous figure, the first female prime minister of Morella, a pioneer. A pioneering pain in our behind. Woman's never picked up a chisel in her life, and she suddenly knows how to run the mitts. She started calling for regulations over there as well, or worse, nationalization. Morella doesn't have unilateral power over the international trade zone. Rizia, Lesbia, and Voxland all have a say. And guess which one of those Mr. Sultana has been cozying up to on this subject? If she and Hegel get their way, Rizia will either lose its mining rights, or our boys will have to pray to Melanyev before going to work every morning. Actually, Melanyev is a staunch atheist. Another reason to keep his influence far from our borders. The political aspect isn't as concerning to me as the loss of access to our most important mines. We have to keep a close eye on this. Your company will rebound when we get Zeo back. I sure hope that's in the cards, Your Majesty. That little nub of land is home to some of the fattest gold veins my company's ever found. No way Wayland could mine it all in 25 years. You're saying that RRG's mining operations in the region could pick up where they left off? Yes, ma'am, assuming we got it back without making too much of a mess. Rusty took a big bite out of a watermelon slice. He wiped the juice off his chin. Look, you know me, I don't mince words. I think you already realize that it's in both of our interests for you to back me up on this squabble. But hey, I'll sweeten the deal. Keep your administration's nose out of RRG business, and I'll sell you back the share I took from your father. Elena pushed her chair back and stood up. I'm going to recuse myself from this conversation. Where's the ladies' room? Just inside. If you never sat on a solid gold toilet, you're in for a treat. She forced a smile as a butler escorted her out. Hugo, Rusty, and I glanced at each other. I mean, on the one hand, it sucks that he's trying to do that to us, but on the other hand, do need the money, and I would also like to have the shares back. You're willing to sell us back 15% of RRG just for refusing to pass regulations. Why not? It's about time we put Royal back in RRG. Partially, anyway. And if I wanted to sell some of Rizia's stake in RRG, I suppose you'd grant me that as well. Sure, Your Majesty. Anything you want. I won't keep wasting your time. Do we have a deal or don't we? Oh, man. And so that's the thing. Like, if I accept this, do I get the money? Do I get money now? And also, does that go into the treasury? Oh, God. Because it just says accept bribe. And then, of course, with Hugo being royally pissed, pun intended, then that would be a problem later on down the line, because I'm pretty sure he'll use this in some sort of type of situation, kind of like in the main game, where it's just like all of a sudden everybody knows every shady ass deal that you did. I will decide on the regulations when the time comes. In the meantime, I promise nothing. Rusty shrugged. Suit yourself. Alina stepped back into the room. That was colder than I expected. Are you gentlemen finished? Hugo practically sprang from his seat. It's been a delight, truly, but we must be heading back to Port Drazen. And here I was about to ask you to stay for lunch. So soon, Your Majesty? Don't worry, you'll be hearing from me. Not if you hear from me first, Your Majesty. See you, Rusty. I could see him cheerfully waving from the veranda as Hugo, Elena, and I stepped back on board the yacht. All of this just feels so icky, and I don't have the power to do anything right now. Erdmark signals joining non-aligned movement. The Kingdom of Erdmark announces a decisive pivot towards the non-aligned movement, marking a strategic diversification from its historical alignment. This move, seen as a bid to craft alternative geopolitical paths distinct from neighboring Runeberg, challenges the prevailing influence of both Grace and the Edo. Coupled with the launch of an ambitious 10-year industrial development initiative, Erdmark's potential realignment could have far-reaching effects on the global stage, particularly by offering a third-way approach amidst the polarizing politics of larger alliances. Surveying near completion on potentially massive new gas field in the West Antician. The gas field in the Western Antician Sea could contain massive new reserves, according to a geologist source interviewed by Geopolitical. The Kingdom of Rizia and the Grand Duchy of Palais are still surveying the borders of this recently discovered field, with conclusive ownership still yet to be determined. However, all signs already point to a resource of great strategic significance. The international community has its eye on this developing situation. Yeah, I'm sure that's not going to turn into a fight at all. And we have a royal visit to Montclair. From anywhere in the city of Montclair, you could look high into the hills and see the ruins of Fortress Azoro. Expanded and fortified over the centuries, it had served as a stronghold for the city's inhabitants from the early years of the Resident Empire until its destruction in the War of Rizian Succession. Today, the ruins served as a symbol of Montclair's resilience and that of its governing house. Perhaps that was why Lucida had invited me here for a tour and a private talk. For safety's sake, a wooden walkway had been constructed over the crumbling remains of the parapets. Lucida and I walked along it while we came to the northwestern corner. How do you like the view, Your Majesty? From here, we could look down into the valley where the provincial capital sprawled across the fast-flowing Alka River and up into the foothills of the mountains opposite us. Imagine how this fortress must have looked 1,000 years ago. Incredible, isn't it? The fortress was closed off for our visit, but a crowd had gathered just outside its walls. We waved down to them, then turned away, allowing the walkway towards the former armory. Our aides and guards stayed a respectable distance behind. Not even the Markians could destroy this place, you know. Only when Rizia's noble families turned against each other did it finally fall. She paused and turned to face me. It took years for the Azaro and Taurus families to repair their bond. I hope our houses will remain harmonious through your reign. Nothing means more to me than keeping the favor of House Azaro. It's great to hear you say that. Your father and mine were close, Your Majesty. General Tadius told me that he felt free to express his true opinions to the king with no fear of repercussion. Lucida bit her lip. She seemed uncharacteristically nervous. I'd like it if you and I had a similar relationship. I want to have that relationship with all my councilors, Duchess. Nobody should feel like they have to hold their opinions back. Perfect, Your Majesty. Thank you. She was smiling, but I registered slight disappointment in her eyes. I'd like to get to know you better. Tell me about yourself. About myself? She seemed to be searching for words. That depends, Your Majesty. What would you like to know? Hmm. Let's just start off with the marriage stuff. Well, why aren't you married? As an Azaro, you should have been paired off the day you came of age. She grimaced. They had a match chosen for me, of course, but my father allowed me to break off the engagement when I joined the military. By the time I got out, I was considered too old to be of use in the marriage arena. Hmm. That's ridiculous. A woman like you should be swarmed with suitors. A wry smile formed on her face. I'm not so pathetic as to base my self-worth on what men think of me, but thank you for the compliment. Do you have any questions of a less intimate nature? Let's see. Do you have any hobbies? I've always enjoyed archery when I've had the time for it. And my father and I used to play chess together. We still do when he has a lucid moment. Hmm. Maybe you and I can play someday? She gave me a taunting look. If you're prepared to lose, Your Majesty. Why did you follow in the Azaro family's footsteps? You've chosen, or, yeah, you could have chosen your own path in life. My path was chosen for me after my uncle was killed in the uprising. Even as a young girl, I knew that marked a turning point. My noble blood didn't make me safe anymore. Hmm. Let's see, those days are over. We don't have to live in fear of another uprising. Your words ring true. I had the exact same thought after my kidnapping. And you didn't feel the drive to do something about it, to armor yourself against such threats in the future. I joined the military so I'd never get caught by surprise like that again. That's all I wanted to know. I hope your curiosity has been satisfied. Hmm. While we're at it, is there anything you want to know about me? Now that you mention it, she looked me in the eye. Turnabout is fair play, Your Majesty. Why aren't you married? Hmm. I'm terrified at the idea of loving someone that much again, only to lose them. Falling in love is like heading into battle. You've got to know what you're up against and protect yourself accordingly. Hmm. I know that now. Next time I'll be better protected. Tell the Golden Guard to form a cordon around your heart. She laughed softly at her own joke. But we'd better move on to what I wanted to say. My house and I had questions regarding your recent meetings in Salabis. Sources say you were quite deep in conversation with the House Saison heir. Hmm. We were speaking of repairing the bond between our houses. As you yourself said, Rizia can only be strong if all its royal family stand together. The Saisons were never a royal family, just a group of merchants who fancied themselves higher than their true station. You know the entire house is still suspected to have ties to Arcasia. Hmm. That isn't surprising. Arcasia has eyes and ears everywhere. They and their allies have spent the better part of this century trying to undermine us. All the more reason not to trust that man around your daughter. Hmm. Hmm. Thank you for your advice. Perhaps I'll require assistance with this in the future. I'm just looking out for national security, as is my job. We had come to a small grassy patch in the shade of the fortress' southern wall. Lucida gestured for me to sit down. I had one more thing I wanted to bring up while we were alone. When I took over my father's position on the Royal Council, he gave me a trove of his old files, which between standard purchase orders and internal security reports, I found this. She reached into her pocket and unfolded a thin square of paper. On it was a map of Palais. Overlaying the outline of the Grand Duchy were arrows, diagrams of tanks and battalions, and hastily scribbled instructions. Some of them were in my father's handwriting. Look at the date, 1949. Intriguing. Why didn't my father tell me about this? Because he didn't like us. He thought he would inform Duke Reinhard, I assume. This plan would have ended in a complete rout, at least with the military of the time. All glory to King Valero, but perhaps it's fortunate that he died before this could be carried out. It pains me to say so, but yes, better that he died rather than order more soldiers to their deaths. Then again, it's possible they never intended to execute this plan. Could have just been idle daydreaming. His dying wish was for me to take back the lands that were lost, but I'm no conqueror. It's an outdated concept, invading territories based on centuries old grudges. Of course, my family would disagree. My province never got over losing our access to the sea. But I don't see any merit in taking back Pales, at least not for historic reasons. I trust your guidance, Duchess. If there's a reason you think we should go to war with Palais again, I want to know. She looked away. I don't want to sound paranoid, but with Lesbia and Ado and Morella becoming closer to Volsland and the CSP, I do wonder whether our neighbor will get swallowed up in the superpower conflict. That's a legitimate worry. Look at what happened to Wayland in the 1930s. Arcasia and United Contana nearly destroyed it by proxy in a rush to gain access to its oil. And now Palais may be sitting on an even more valuable resource. So you think we should conquer Palais for its own good? Conquer is such an old-fashioned word. Think of it as a chess game. Sometimes it's best to remove certain pieces from the board before it's too late. It doesn't mean I think we should attack Palais again. Using diplomacy to get them on our side would be a more effective tactic. I know that. I've been aiming for diplomacy this entire time. If we get into a dispute over the new gas field, it may be more difficult to stay the course. If you wanted me to, I could send a task force to Palais to monitor the situation more closely. It'll just take a small amount of funding. And of course, I don't have the money. Oh God, this is terrible. Thank you for your suggestion, but I'm afraid such an action will be misinterpreted as aggression. The idea would be to avoid aggression, but I understand. She begins standing up. Should I say this or should I say this? Because I've heard that you can romance her, and I would actually like to romance her. May I keep that map of Palais? I don't see why not. She handed me the piece of paper. I took a last look at it. I would do everything in my power to prevent conflict with Palais, but just in case. If it does come to that, you'd need a better strategy. or a better army. But speaking of the military, it's nearly 4. Let me show you something. She gestured to the stone wall behind us. A metal ladder led to the top of a small watchtower, now the fortress's highest surviving structure. Lucida scaled it in a matter of seconds. Follow her. I followed her to the top of the tower. From this side, we could see Camp Domus, the country's largest military training facility. It stretched far into the distance, with hundreds of barracks clustered around grounds that simulated all types of terrain. We looked down onto the main square. A platoon of some 50 soldiers, mostly men, but a few women as well, was preparing for an exercise. Listen closely. A drummer to the side of the square beat out a complex rhythm on a snare. Long, short, short, long. That's an inverted wedge. The soldiers snapped into a V-shaped formation, narrow at the back and widening towards the front. Very impressive. The best trained soldiers in South Marcopa. Another rhythm came from the drum, 2 rim shots followed by a rapid roll. Extended lines spreading out into herringbone. Almost unconsciously, she started moving along with the soldiers. But as she put her left foot down, the section of wall beneath it suddenly gave way. She began falling backwards. Grab her arm. I grabbed her arm and pulled her towards me to safety. She looked up at me in surprise, breathing heavily. Don't let go of her. I held onto her for a few long seconds. Her eyes softened as they met mine. Nice reflexes, Your Majesty. From below, a camera clicked. A news photographer had managed to reach the base of the fortress and capture a picture of us. Lucida hurriedly stepped away from me, brushed herself off, and turned to the guards. Now, who the hell let that happen? You are to find this photographer and prevent the publication of this picture at all costs. You heard her. I'm embarrassed at this obvious security lapse. You ought to be ashamed of yourselves. Or should I disregard that order, gentlemen? Let the papers do what they will. Which one will make her happy in this situation? Because I feel like she's trying to gauge the situation. I'm gonna say disregard that order, gentlemen. Let the papers do what they will. Lucida spun around towards me. Really? I thought you wouldn't want the public to think anything was happening between us. Yeah, I'm not gonna say that. That kind of sounds dickish. And why not? You yourself said our houses should be more harmonious. She gave me a coy smile. That's true, Your Majesty. The smile was still on her face as we left the fortress. So did I do the right thing? I guess I did the right thing there. Okay. Let's see. Rufus Gregg's Royal Gossip, Love or War. Dearest readers, it's been forever since I've been able to bring you a scoop of such enormous, one might say royal magnitude. Here we go. After 8 years of bachelorhood, our widowed King Ramus has been spotted in the muscular arms of War and Security Counselor Duchess Lucida Azaro. The House Azaro heiress was long thought unmarriageable due to her age and masculine occupation, but it looks like there may be hope for her after all. The highest hopes in all of Rizia, in fact. As for His Majesty, has he truly gotten over his late wife, Princess Lena Livingston, or is this a mere distraction? The Herald welcomes all theories. Swordland enters economic recession despite efforts. The shadow of recession has descended upon Swordland, marking a period of economic strife under President Ewald Alfonso's leadership, reminiscent of Tarquin Soul's post-Civil War era. Despite Alfonso's aggressive pursuit of growth via new trade deals, his strategies are beleaguered by entrenched political opposition and a global economic slowdown. With analysts split on the recession's longevity, the pressure mounts on Alfonso to navigate Swordland out of economic peril before the end of his term, an endeavor fraught with uncertainty and the specter of history's judgment. Okay. And we go on another turn without being able to really do anything. So hopefully nothing too crazy will happen. Let's see, read the report. Gas field survey reaches completion. The Rizian survey ships sent to assess the boundaries of the Oris gas field have returned to Calicabis and reported their findings. They have discovered that at least half of the field lies within a 200-kilometer radius of the island, giving Rizia a claim to it. Our foreign ministry has contacted Pelesian Duke Axel Reinhardt. It is expected a meeting will be arranged to discuss these findings and our country's next step. So that's going to be on the next turn. Let's see. We do have a couple decrees that we can do. Launch the anti-narcotics campaign. We have the non-racist religious tax. A 20% VAT explicitly on non-racist communities, channeling additional fiscal resources. Okay. Allow free press, of course. Medium third global sale. Of course, we don't have any type of way of doing any of this. We have the Monkeys Port and Naval Shipyard expansion. This would require 1 authority, 3 budget, 2 turn construction, -1 energy per turn on completion, +1 Marines on completion, +1 military ship and submarine on completion, +1 military ship and submarine per turn. Good God. Let's see. Have his coal mine development. Constructed the Callus gold mine. Again, it takes 3 turns. Improved Palais logistical hub in Mermy. -5 budget again. Good God. Establish Romus Taurus Military Academy. Okay, again. Establish Zeal Intelligence Hub in Mave Nortis. Okay. Recognizing the ever-present aspiration to reunite the territory of Zeal with Rizia, we hereby sanction the establishment of the Mave Nortis Foreign Intelligence Hub. This center will be instrumental in our intelligence endeavors, gathering crucial information and conducting covert operations. It would also play a pivotal role in influencing the Rizian population in Zeal, nudging them towards the vision of reunification and freeing the territory from Wayland's grasp. Okay. All right, on to the next turn. Between seas, what more terrible things will happen? Can I get a break? Can I get a break and get some extra money and stuff? Because good Lord. Wait, that was just chapter 1. My God. That is wild. Okay. Now I have no money coming in. My energy is just 0 per turn from industrial production. So I have council meeting on the Palais gas dispute. I have react to protesters. Respond to the Monkeys Palace welfare protesters. Okay. And I don't think I have any reports or anything. So yeah. So I need money per turn from military expenditures. Good God. And -6 per administrative cost. That is wild. Raise base income tax. That would give me 1 budget per turn, which sure, that helps, but not a whole lot. Remove income tax. Tax credits for business, welfare privatization. That would cost me all my authority. but it would give me 2 budget. And again, it wouldn't really give me any money per turn. Remove Gokana's blasphemy law, that would just cost 3 authority. Residence and work permits for migrants, that would cost me my 1 budget and all my authorities. It would cost me everything. Legalize illegal substances, that would cost all of my authority and I would get 1 budget per turn. Allow free press, that would just cost me authority. Enforced racist religious education, that would just cost me authority. Tenant protection laws, that would just cost me some authority and a budget, so put me in a bad situation. Can't do any of these. Sell 3rd batch of military equipment to international markets. This would cost me authority again, and it would give me budget, but again, it doesn't really do anything per turn, and I want some stuff that's per turn. But it looks like in order to do anything, I'm going to have some budget. And again, all of these are kind of in the future. Let's see. Trade. Increase health education. Yeah, all of these other things that I don't even have access to, they also don't really benefit me. They just cost me money per turn. Tax credits for business, investment in public transport, infrastructure. Let me see, non-ruacist religious tax. Furthermore, it will precipitate diplomatic complexities as countries like Wayland and Roomberg, with their substantial Desner's population, perceive this policy as an affront to their citizens and spiritual beliefs. Enacting the non-ruacist tribute decree, Rizia imposes a 20% VAT explicitly on non-ruacist communities, channeling conditional fiscal resources into the kingdom's treasury each turn. I don't have anything that would give me authority. Yeah, that just gives me 2 budget. Yeah, I don't have anything that would give me any authority. I guess I'll just hold on to this 1 budget for right now because everything looks a little sus. React to protesters. A substantial crowd has amassed at the palace gates in Monkey, vocalizing their concerns over the lack of access to quality welfare services and increasingly difficult living conditions. The monarchy can choose to disperse them, allow their peaceful protests, or offer assurances to improve welfare spending across the country. Let me table this for a second, because... Oh. Well, I can't look at this. Okay. I kind of want to say disperse it just so that gives me some authority, but at the same time, I kind of want to allow it. I don't think anything I do really right now is, I don't have anything that's really going to require a significant amount of authority. So I might as well just go along with this and allow the protest, but at the same time, and I don't know how much the increased health and education funds would cost. And we just don't have that type of money right now. I guess I can offer assurances, but I honestly don't, like, it's something that I want to do, but I just don't know how much that's going to cost down the line. So I'll offer assurances. Okay, stat increase, equipment, partially self-sufficient economy, half full military, neutral Gokanda's community, stat increased authority. Oh. Oh, that's just from, okay, that's just from the turn. Um, okay, so let me see. Could you guys go away? Thank you. And you go away. So let me see. Yeah, that just costs budget and authority. And I hate to, I hate to look at things like this purely from just a stat perspective. Let me see. Provide energy heating subsidies for citizens, landowners tax, investment in public transport. Permanent work permits for laborers, resident and work permits for migrants. Increase health and education funding. So that will cost 2 authority and 3 budget. I have the authority, just don't have the budget. So yeah, I'll hold off onto this and see if I can work something out later. Read the report. Protests at palace gates. Thousands of protesters gathered outside the monkey's palace complaining about the state of our welfare system. After rousing speeches by local community leaders, the crowd slowly started to dissipate with the protests over by the early evening. Okay. Council meeting on the Palais gas dispute. I had called a council meeting in Fort Ailes to discuss our strategy in the Palais gas dispute. The city was named after its most famous building, a Vulgish fortress that now served as the government headquarters for the Palais Administrative District. Titus escorted me down the hallway to a nondescript conference room where Lorenzo, Lucida, Elena, and Hugo were already waiting. My daughter had requested to stay home this time around, claiming she was feeling unwell. I took a seat across from Lucida. Look at her. We made eye contact for a brief moment. She blushed. The other counselors studiously trained their eyes away from us. Good morning, Your Majesty. Shall we fill you in on the situation so far? Yes, please. I'll take it from here. As you know, our joint team of researchers recently completed their assessment of the gas field between Palais and Rizia, tentatively nicknamed Oris. The Rizian surveyors determined that the field lay in both Rizian and Pelagian territory. However, a few days after our team returned to port, we received the news that the Pelagians had made a different decision. Duke Reinhardt is now under the impression that the entire gas field belongs to Palais. He has ordered the exploratory drilling to begin immediately. Lucida had a worried look on her face. A Pelagian drill ship departed the port of Remis at 0800 this morning. It is expected to reach the field by this time tomorrow. Your Majesty, I have advocated for caution regarding Palais in the past, but this strikes me as highly concerning. I completely agree, Lucida. We cannot ignore this obvious provocation. I share those concerns, Duchess. The Pelagians were out of line to send that ship. A response from Rizia is certainly warranted. I called this meeting today to decide on our course of action. We have a meeting set with Duke Reinhardt in 2 days, but which time the ship will have reached its destination. It is my hope that the Pelagians are still open to negotiating the field's ownership, and that this is just a tactic to give them an edge. You're getting ahead of yourself, Lorenzo. The king should be as informed about this dispute as possible before heading to Palais. You're right as usual, Miss Warner. I want to know everything I can about the disputed field. Then where should we start, Your Majesty? Well, why is this a dispute? I thought our maritime borders were clear. They've been shifting for the past century. The late empire of Vogels used to control the waters between Palais and Calacabiz. but the area came into question when the island joined Rizia in 1855. Since then, both Rizia and Palais have variously claimed ownership of these waters and the resources therein. The borders that Rizia recognizes today are the ones defined by the 1942 AN Directive on Offshore Resources. According to those, the field should be split almost exactly evenly between our nations. Ah, yes, Andor. A nation has the sovereign right to any undersea gas and oil wells located within 200 kilometers of its coast. And in case of overlap, no one country may exploit those resources without the other's agreement. So it's clear Palais is breaking the law by claiming sole ownership. Technically, no. Reinhardt's predecessor signed Andor, but the Duke has yet to ratify it. The Palacians furthermore state that as a sparsely populated island, Calacabiz should not have the same maritime radius as mainland Rizia. But that's nonsense, right? It wouldn't hold up in an international court. That's debatable, Your Majesty. With enough legal firepower and international support, Palais could have a case. And of course, if they have Lesbia threatening them and stuff like that, and they decide to side with Lesbia, then Lesbia would turn around and have Ado at their back, and Ado would fund them. Ah, God. Do we know how much gas the field contains? We still don't have exact numbers, but the surveys have confirmed that it's a lot. Quite possibly more than the current natural gas reserves of Rizia and Palais combined. In other words, whichever country controls the Aurus field will become Marcopa's next energy superpower. Oof. I'm not even going to ask this because of course we need the gas. That's enough information. I'm ready to discuss our response. Very well. Lucida raised a hand. What troubles me is the specter of Lesbia. If Palais claims the field, I'm almost certain that our northern neighbors will end up with the rights to it. They could be a presence in our waters for years to come. That isn't necessarily bad for us. Maybe a compromise can be found that involves all three of our countries. But then what happens if Morella and their Voxlandian friends get involved? They won't be happy with an Ado member drilling so far south. And that could lead to the kind of consequences I was warning you about earlier, Your Majesty. Lorenzo had a pained expression on his face. I still don't think we should give up on the possibility of negotiation. You established a rapport with Duke Reinhardt prior to your coronation. Perhaps there's a way to build on that. You're right. If we meet in person, I'm sure I'll be able to get him to back down. I'm sure of it as well. Shall we discuss our diplomatic options? Are you leaning towards any particular outcome? Can't we just split the field 50-50 with Palais? That's what we have a legal claim to, isn't it? Yes, that was the outcome I was hoping for before this incident. But it seems that without the aid of a third party, sharing the field will be more difficult than expected. Do you mean asking the Alliance of Nations to arbitrate the dispute? Correct, Your Majesty. AN arbitration is the typical path in disputes like these. Unfortunately, arbitration is an expensive and time-consuming process, and there's no guarantee it would end in our favor. With that said, it's definitely the safest way to avoid a diplomatic incident. We have Roomberg on our side. I'm sure Queen Beatrice would support us through the arbitration process. The weight of grace versus that of Lesbia and Ado. We would be evenly matched. Is there a way we can claim the entire field for Rizia? Not without major diplomatic repercussions, I'm afraid. No matter which maritime boundaries you look at, It's clear that half of the field lies in Pelasian territory. The only way for Rizian oil and gas to access the entire field will be to purchase the exploration rights from Palais. Sounds costlier than I envisioned, but we would certainly reap the rewards. Why don't we pursue that option? We could, but we have to consider Lesbia's potential involvement. If Lesbia already has designs on the field, Palais could force us to outbid them for access to it. And before that, we'd have to convince Duke Reinhard that Rizia is a trustworthy partner. Which might be possible. Reinhard still seems to trust you more than your father, Your Majesty. Okay, I would welcome any other suggestions from my counselors. Hugo cleared his throat. If I may, Your Majesty. We have still not decided what to do about the Pelasian drill ship. I don't like the idea of it being present in the gas field during our negotiations, but I don't see a way to stop it. I do, Your Majesty, but my fellow counselors won't like it. She spoke slowly as if thinking out loud. With His Majesty's blessing, the Rizian Navy could surround the field, preventing the drill ship from reaching its destination. Lorento looked up in outrage. Are you in your right mind, young lady? The Navy. We'd be escalating the situation. Young lady, I know you come from a different generation, Mr. Escobar, but that address was completely out of line. Excuse me, Your Majesty, but only the impetuousness of youth could be behind such a rash response. Actually, my elderly friend, Duchess Ozaro may have the right idea. Lorento looked at her indignantly. Of course, we shouldn't fire on their ship, but a blockade would keep the gas field clear until you've had a chance to speak with Duke Reinhard. If we do end up in arbitration talks, Palais having an established presence in the RE field would give them an unwarranted edge. Oh God. I really want to use diplomacy, but at the same time, I do kind of feel like this is putting me in a situation where I have to posture. And at the same time, if I posture, I'm kind of in a bad situation with my military. They suck. Palais and Lesbia are literally testing the waters with us. If we let them reach the field, we have already lost it. I agree that asserting Rizian sovereignty is of the utmost importance, but I'm wary of miring ourselves in another conflict. What if the Pelasians call our bluff? That is a concern, Your Grace. We have a capable navy, but we won't be able to outgun Palais if it comes down to that. That is not a decision to take lightly. It does give us authority. Boy, this is bad. Everything is looking like this is going to end up being war. I really did want to be diplomatic, but this is going to be tough. This is going to be really, really tough. Because I could just easily see if we order a blockade, they're going to be like, he's going to just be like, oh, you're no different from your father. I thought we were friends, and so on and so forth. But at the same time, it's just, I don't want to seem like I'm just appeasing everybody. Of course, I want to be nice to people and try to come to diplomatic conclusions, but people keep pushing my buttons. So, let me see. I'm going to say I agree, and I think we should exercise caution. I will meet with Duke Reinhard before deciding our next steps. And I hope this goes well. Good God. Lorento nodded, relieved. Very good, Your Majesty. I'll get everything in order for your meeting. Our naval forces will be on standby in case you change your mind. I pray to Saint Work that they will not be needed. There was a moment's silence. I'll adjourn the meeting so Mr. Escabel can begin his preparations. We'll keep you abreast of any changes prior to your departure for Palais. I fully expect a peaceful resolution. Good luck, Your Majesty. I mean that sincerely. The meeting drew to a close. I spent a sleepless night in Fort Ailes, wondering what would happen when the ship from Palais got to its destination. Ah, boy. And of course, I have decrees available. Expand Territorial Air Force Base, strengthen Palais border fortifications, expand Fort Ailes Naval Base. So many things, and I can do fuck all about it. Okay. And more than a few events as well. All right, Dirty and Golconda's communities sheltering BFF. Internal security forces have informed us that Rizia's Dirtian communities may be harboring fugitives from the Bluish Freedom Front in Wayland. As Victor Smolek's government cracks down on the separatist movement, an increasing number of Blues are fleeing to Dirtia, and from there to Rizia via the Salabas Harbor. Our security forces will monitor the situation closely as it develops. Wayland restricts access to Zeo region. Wayland has reduced travel access to the disputed Zeo region, making it particularly hard for non-Wessex citizens to visit the region. Local officials have cited security and risk of further terror attacks as a reason for this temporary measure. Yeah, temporary. Okay, and of course we'll have Arcasia secures Pyrrhic victory in South Xena conflict. Arcasia emerges from the South Xena conflict bearing the hallmarks of a Pyrrhic victory, the toll of war casting long shadows over its future endeavors. The sustained campaign, though successful in reaffirming Arcasia's superpower status, has left a trail of devastation and a populace wary of conflict. The implications of this prolonged military engagement extended beyond the immediate theater of war, potentially influencing Arcasia's strategic decisions in regions such as Central Line and Rica, and its position within the broader Marcopian geopolitical chessboard. So I do wonder if because of that, that means Lesbia is kind of on its own. Like, yeah, Lesbia is still going to get backing from them and money and so on and so forth, but they're not going to get directly involved. So that will kind of help us in the whole Palais situation. Okay. The Guild of Royal Allies, Grace, or the Grand Duchy of Palais. I'm going to go ahead and go to the meeting with Duke Reinhardt. It was my first visit to Palais since becoming King of Rizia. Titus and I stood side by side, peering out the window of Castle Reinhardt. The Grand Duchy's royal residence was built on the foundations of an ancient palico, one of the stone fortifications that gave Palais its names. After his coronation, Duke Axel Reinhardt had hired an up-and-coming local architect to expand the old building into a sweeping, bulging wood and glass structure that seemed almost alive. The reception room had been moved to the top floor and boasted enormous curved windows with a view of the Palais skyline. Its soaring angular skyscrapers were unlike anything built in Rizia. And I'll just go ahead and kind of leave that there so you can see that while I'm reading and know who Axel Reinhardt is. Strong chin, looks like Superman. So, this is the Pearl of the Antician. You sound unimpressed, Captain. I'm a simple man, sir. Give me the classism of Palais Resna over whatever this is. Where are you from, Titus? Born and raised in Port Drazen. My father was killed during the operation to take back Palais. I took up championship boxing to support my family. So much senseless bloodshed. May it never happen again. For what it's worth, sir, he believed in the cause. He never turned against King Valero. A panel in the wall slid open, and a secretary clad in a pastel mini dress emerged. She motioned for me to enter. Uh, Let me see. In kind of want to say enter the breach. Make yourself comfortable. This might be a while. Will do, sir. The secretary announced my entrance. I stepped into the room and was greeted by Duke Reinhardt. The Pelasian ruler hadn't aged a day since we last met. He was tall, square-jawed, with looks out of an adventure serial. I recalled that the tabloids had nicknamed him Duke Dashing. He maintained eye contact as he bowed to me. Your Majesty, we meet again. It's always a pleasure to visit this beautiful castle. Really? You think it's beautiful? It's breathtaking. He raised an eyebrow. I wasn't sure about it myself, but when you're the leader of such an advanced economy, there's always pressure to keep up with the times. You know how it is. The secretary left, closing the door behind her. The Duke and I took seats on opposite sides of a wooden conference table. His posture was casual, even as he regarded me with intensity. I'll be honest with you, Your Majesty. I never expected my brother to abdicate. I was perfectly happy living a life of leisure, coasting off the family fortune, enjoying the odd celebrity rendezvous. Wait, which celebrities? If I listed them all, we'd never have time for this talk. He looked me in the eye. I know that our expedition may have seemed like an act of aggression, but all we are doing is claiming what is rightfully ours. I recognize your claim on the field, but you must recognize Rizia's right to it as well. You can't truly think that the field's proximity to Calacabiz gives you a right to it. Our island counts just as much as your barely legitimate country. Calacabiz may be small, but is still a part of the great nation of Rizia. You chose a convenient time to get patriotic about an island full of exiles. His expression turned more serious. Your Majesty, I urge you to let this go. There are more powerful interests at play than either of us. That's precisely why I will not let this go. Western superpowers have no place meddling in South Marcopan affairs. I wouldn't call it meddling exactly, he sighed. Yes, Palais was part of the Vogus Empire, but we developed our own laws and customs, even our own language. When the Empire fell apart, what were we supposed to do? Simply give up everything we had built? Palais could have kept its cultural identity intact if it had rejoined Rizia. Your father would never have accepted that. Even if he had, my family never would have agreed. They have too much pride. So they accepted help from Lesbia, the only country willing to support our independence. They supported your independence by making you dependent on them. You know how wealthy we are. It wasn't entirely a one-way street. Let's see. I kind of want to say the first one, but I also kind of want to say the second one. Now that Lesbia is an ADO member, they won't want to be connected to a monarchy for long. They'll have you overthrown the first chance they get. Or I understand why Palais accepted Lesbia's aid, but now that Morella is in league with Volksland, you could get caught between superpowers. That almost sounds like a good argument, but it also sounds kind of weak. Ah, man. You know, I just kind of want to just go ahead and go to Kyrut and just be done with all of this. I understand why Pele accepted Lespia's aid, but now that Morella is in league with Vogsland, you could get caught between superpowers. He leaned forward and lowered his voice. I know that. I'm not a fool. But in the meantime, Lesbia needs our gas, and they are promising us a sum that we can hardly refuse. Unless. Uh, unless what? He spoke his next words very deliberately. I could envision a future where Palais severs its ties with Lesbia in favor of a partnership with Rizia. But as my late cousin Ivar learned the hard way on holiday in the Montes Islands, one doesn't jump out of a plane without a parachute. Do you understand what I'm saying, Your Majesty? I do. How big of a parachute are we talking about? He blinked in surprise. I didn't think you'd come to the table so quickly, but great. I was always It was always my family's policy not to discuss money out loud, so Duke Reinhardt grabbed the nearest piece of paper and scribbled a number on it. This would buy you the full exploration rights to the Aurus field as we are preparing to grant Lesbia. Cede the field to us and pay what we're asking, and Rizia will have all the energy it could ever ask for. I took a look at the number he'd written down. An upfront fee, an annual extraction rights payment, and in exchange, a stable annual energy supply from the gas field. It was way more than our treasury could afford. God, how much was it? Can't I just buy the rights to part of the field? This is an all or nothing deal, I'm afraid. Frankly, I thought Rizia could easily afford it. Our resources, I kind of don't want to say that. But I do kind of want to be honest with them at the same time. God, our resources have shrunk in the past years. That's why we need that gas field. However badly you need it, we need it more. Unfortunately, if you can't purchase the rights to the entire field for the price I'm asking, we will be forced to honor our original deal with Lesbia. Crap, man. Then we will have to enter the arbitration process. I'll see you in court, Duke Reinhardt. Duke Reinhardt frowned. If there is truly no other choice, then I will gladly agree to enter arbitration. But it's not quite the outcome I was hoping for. And I guess I'm going to send the freaking Navy. I didn't want to do that, but here we are. And, okay, as a matter of fact, I'm sending naval reinforcement to prevent Palais from further invading the field during the arbitration process. His nostrils flared. That's really not the outcome I was hoping for. I'm only taking precautions. Then so will we. He reached under his desk and pressed an intercom button. Hilda, be a doll and help show His Majesty the way out of the building. Would want him getting lost. He sat back in his chair and scrutinized me closely. I hope you understand that if your Navy enters the field before the AN has decided its ownership, I will be obligated to send our own fleet to join yours. Later, if it is said, so it is, so it will be. Sure. Duke Reinhardt's secretary opened the door. He stood up and gestured for me to do the same. Until next time, King Ramus. I rejoined Titus in the reception room. We followed Hilda through winding corridors to the front door. We stepped outside into the waning sunlight. He waited until we were out of the building's shadow to speak. How'd it go? We may yet have a chance to avenge your father's death. Titus nodded wordlessly. We got into the car and began the long trip back to Port Drazen. This is terrible. This is just absolutely fucking terrible. Oh, man. Like, I did not want to be, this militaristic dick, but I'm kind of being forced into this. And that honestly sucks. Let's see. There's nothing I can do with the military. Not military, it's just, my God. What is this? I have one battleship, no submarines. Like, what can I do? Fleet? What do you mean, fleet? Hell, I don't even think Sorlin was this ass. Okay. I guess I'll go ahead and do the Guild of Royal Allies, and then I will stop it there for this. I did want this to be a much longer video than I normally do in order to cover me for the weekends. So yeah, let's do the Guild of Royal Allies, and then we'll call it a day after that. Confederacy of Vindenism requests support in uprising. My one financial aid. With instability in key states of the Confederacy, such as the Sultanate of Rankara, Holy Isle of Penguvi, and the Duchy of Tamarin, the situation is rapidly deteriorating. Prince Consort Kabuin Sangtam leads the effort to maintain monarchic control and suppress the uprising, but their resources are stretched thin. In a request from Great Solidarity, Vindenism turns to the Guild for assistance. I can't help you, sir. I am broke. I do not have a lot of money. Okay, so we have problems ahoy. Man, do we have problems. Attend House of Delegates session. We'll have that coming up. And we have a call with Prime Minister Alvarez. Wonderful. This douche. Maybe he won't be drunk this time. I doubt it. Of course, it's just a bluff, but still, it is a thing. So I'm going to go ahead and stop it there for this video. And then next week, we'll go ahead and continue further in this absolute travesty of everything that is going on. This is just terrible. Like, this is so terrible. And honestly, I think this is much harder than the main game. The main game, I guess it's just because of the way bills come out and things like that. It's kind of easier to picture how things have gone. And since this is just, good God, there's so many moving parts. And I think that's probably the biggest problem that I have right now is that there's so many moving parts. It's really hard to focus on because you just don't have the resources. You don't have the resources to focus on your military. You don't have resources to focus on all the things that could go on as far as order inside your country. And on top of that, the untrustworthy counselors and welfare and law and order and everything else in between. So it's just really hard because everything is kind of fucked in this country. The military is terrible. The internal politics is terrible. Everything is just bad. And there's no easy way out of any of this. Boy, I wish it would just kind of pick a fight and just kind of go along those lines. But that doesn't seem to be the case. And I don't know what this is going to mean for us in the long run. I'm assuming in the end, we can't die because the King Ramastoris is in the main game. But who knows? Maybe I'll find the worst ending possible, end up dead. I have no idea. But we'll keep on trucking along and see how this goes out or how this turns out. But it's not looking good right now. It is not looking good at all. So Anywho, if you like the video, like the video. If you want to see more content like this, subscribe. I have a lot of things on the channel, and I will have many other things in the future. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to leave them in the comment section, and I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next week, and see you when I see you. See ya.